Good morning and welcome to ATARC's Hybrid Cloud Virtual Summit. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Alyssa Cole and I'm the event manager over here at ATARC. And today I have the pleasure of emceeing today's summit. ATARC stands for the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. ATARC is a nonprofit that facilitates collaboration between government, industry, and academia in order to accelerate technology modernization initiatives. They provide ongoing opportunities for cross-agency collaboration through on-site interaction, learning, and market research. Thank you to our partners over at Red Hat, Acquia, Micro Focus Government Solutions, Ping Identity, Nutanix, Pluralsight, and Pure Storage for helping us create today's summit. Truly all great partners of ATARC. Additionally, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoy this great and informative day. We also would like to remind you that after each of our panels, there will be a time for Q&A. Please place all of your questions in the Q&A box on your screen during the panels. We have some amazing panelists today, and they really want to answer your questions. I also wanted to remind you to answer the poll questions that will be put up on your screen throughout today's panels. That way you'll be eligible to be receiving CP credits. Up first, we'll be hearing from our visionary keynote, Thomas Santucci. Tom is a director over at the IT Modernization in the Office of Government-Wide Policy within GSA. Tom, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Alyssa. How are you?
Good.
It would be really cool if the participants put their company name or agency that they're with on their name, if they could rename themselves. It would be nice to see who our partners are. Hey, I want to thank the sponsors for doing this summit. This is really exciting. A little fun fact on this is the Government Information Technology Executive Council, which is now ATARC, was created in 1966. It was a White House memorandum was published so senior level government executives and industry could share and collaborate in an open forum on IT ideas, challenges, and successes. It was the perfect public-private partnership, a PPP, if you will. So I just thought it was pretty cool that in 66, there weren't that many IT companies available at that time, but they still saw the public-private partnership being important, and it's even more so today. So I want to thank both sides of those fence. The panels today are going to be really cool. The managing millions of identities across hybrid cloud. My buddy, Ken Myers, who's my cohort in Office of Government-Wide Policy is doing that, along with Leila, I can't pronounce her last name, but she's the Director of National Security Council at the White House. She's also the Director of Strategic Workforce Planning, where she is responsible for coordinating the implementation of the national security workforce. I think workforce should be a topic of every discussion we have going forward because we're all vying for the same talent and there just isn't enough of it. We've got to develop it and we've got to change the culture and just change the whole mindset of how we train and get our staffs ready for the next generation. The next one, securing the hybrid workforce, Trafinia Flynn Salzman, the security architect at SBA. She's soft-spoken, but a cyber ninja nonetheless. And she's doing it, Bill Kirkendall, who I don't know, who's the CIO at Court Services. And it reminds me that our old friend from our executive council days, Carolyn Sanders at Pretrial Services, she always told me the large agencies aren't secure until the small agencies are. And I think that's more true today with zero trust and everything else. And there are two agencies that are small agencies by definition, but communicate heavily with the large agencies. So I always think of Carolyn when I think of that. And then the final panel is the data management for hybrid and multi-cloud. Dave Catanoso from VA, who I know and had lunch or dinner with this week in Pittsburgh. Bob Bowen, old buddy, who delivered the NIST Cloud Computing Technology Roadmap from NIST. And it's moderated by my friend Chris Oglesby, who we all co-chair the ATARC's Cloud and Infrastructure Mission Area. Now, Dave and I visited a VA hospital, and it's both amazing and scary, the amount of IT running our medical devices. We met a doctor who was in charge of the nuclear CT scanners, telling us about IP addresses, ACLs, and firewalls, and all while running a server under his desk to operate the equipment in the next room. It was like we hadn't moved in 25 years in technology. So, like Alyssa said, my name is Tom Santucci. I'm the Director of IT Modernization within Office of Government-Wide Policy. I manage the PMO for the Data Center and Cloud Optimization Initiative. And in this role, we are managing partners with OMB to serve as trusted agents, information brokers, and provide subject matter expertise to agencies, both big and small. We are a lot like, in some respects, some of our job, we're a lot like ATARC. We are, the CIO Council developed a cloud and infrastructure community of practice, which is behind the firewall. It's federal government only, which we manage. And this is where the federal workforce can discuss internally topics surrounding data center and cloud, and we can learn from colleagues and successes and challenges, just like ATARC. And anyone with an email address of .gov, .mil, or .edu can join. We've got 3,800 members and 200 agencies. We host monthly meetings, special sessions, and open office hours. And we run the complete gamut of topics: cloud, data center, portfolio management, IPv6, which we're also a member or managing partner of, FinOps, zero trust, everything. We want to reach the masses, and we're in tune with this administration. We're making efforts to share our knowledge with the state and locals and have industry part of these discussions. So we'll be teaming up with ATARC and others going forward on public summits surrounding zero trust, cyber, and other topics to make a concerted effort to reach state and locals. So more on that later. So let me talk about the policies under my purview. Data Center Optimization Initiative. Since the FDCCI days, 10 or 12 years ago, the federal government's closed over 6,000 data centers. We've saved over $6 billion in savings and avoidance. In the last FTAR hearing, all 24 CFO Act agencies received an A grade on the DCOI portion of the FTAR scorecard. It was a huge success, and a round of applause to every individual that was a part of closing a data center. If you've ever closed a data center, you know how hard it is to close one, and the amount of risk and heroic work that goes on behind the scenes is incredible. So I want to thank everyone that was a part of that. Now, 2016, Cloud First came along with the first cloud strategy document, and then it morphed into Cloud Smart in 2019. And both strategies helped agencies utilize cloud services. Cloud First was more about moving blindly to the cloud, but had unintended consequences. But Cloud Smart was the next generation and required agencies to do more upfront work into looking at their portfolio and making strategic decisions based on the needs of the mission. It required an agency to migrate to the cloud for maybe lower cost, or maybe it was business resiliency or improved service delivery. And whatever the reason, portfolio insight was key. This required agencies to do the hard work of managing portfolios of applications, services, and infrastructure. Change all the colors of money to green and find the true cost of ownership for any of these applications or services that you wanted to migrate. Identify legacy systems and or components of systems and develop plans to eradicate them. Identify and get rid of the excess compute, reduce the duplication, and increase the redundancy. There's a tagline. Right-size your data center footprint. Use AppRat or FinOps to do continual enterprise portfolio analysis. You are not done because you moved to the cloud. You are only in the beginning of a 3 or 5 year life cycle. And most of the investments will have gone through a rigorous review process, at least initially. And do a review every 3 years and have data 12 months in advance, have data 12 months to the CIO for approval in advance of any renewals. And finally, make the hard decisions on where your application should live. On-prem, commercial data center, cloud, SaaS, or some of all. But these are all agency level decisions, but let them be based on facts and figures. So, and we're doing a public summit next week, and I wanted to talk to you about that. It's called the Data Center Sustainability Summit. On April 6th and 7th, we're hosting a Data Center Sustainability Summit, and we're going to explore the environmental and modernization benefits of transitioning from government-owned data centers to commercially owned facilities, cloud computing, and software as a service. I'm really excited about this. There will be lots of government speakers as well as speakers from industry, such as the big CSPs, large data center providers, and technology companies. The idea here is to get to America's path to net zero emission buildings by 2050. It won't happen without IT at the table and heavily invested. We'll have one panel that will discuss the administration's climate and sustainability priorities in the context of the federal government's ever increasing demand on data center and cloud computing. Another one, revitalizing underserved communities with disruptive data center technologies by building microgrid and off-grid data centers around the country in economically depressed areas. And then mission and environmental benefits of cloud service providers and software as a service. Federal agencies will share the environmental benefits they've obtained from moving to the cloud. We'll be able to quantify that. Additionally, the cloud service providers will discuss their corporate sustainability initiatives and how they use scalable on-demand cloud solutions that can enable federal agencies to reduce their carbon footprints. And then data center sustainability strategies and initiatives. Data center practitioners will explore the various renewable energy technologies already well adopted by the private sector, which can help the US government achieve some of its ambitious sustainability goals. And then we're going to talk about greening federal IT infrastructure contracts and purchasing. This panel will discuss emerging guidance and best practices for weaving sustainability language into government contracts. And what's powering state-of-the-art data center today? High performance computing continues to grow, and it will, and it's really a power sucker. So we have to manage that on a case-by-case basis, and enabling data centers to use AI and data analytics to optimize their facilities' performance. It's only going to get worse as we move forward and collect more data. And then bolstering national security with climate resilient critical infrastructure. Who in their right mind would think that COVID would pretty much shut this economy down if it wasn't for data centers on the backbone of the US economy? And thus, amongst the nation's most important critical infrastructure, this panel will discuss the resiliency and measures taken to protect these important assets from a variety of threats, including climate. And then the future of data center and decoy metrics. The current DCI memo is set to expire at the end of the year, and GSA is interested in obtaining information about sustainability best practices for IT infrastructure that could help and inform the government of new DCOI metrics. Excuse me. This summit will feature 2 roundtable discussions with former government leaders in industry to obtain their thoughts on the next generation of data center optimization initiatives. And there will probably be some cloud metrics in there. We also run the IPv6 policy. We've done a lot of work through the community of practice to develop templates and guidance documents and measurements on IPv6. We did the IPv6 transition guidance, the templates, the project plan charter template, the implementation strategy guide, and the statement of work best practices language, how to insert IPv6 requirements in contract language, and maintain an ongoing FAQ document. And then last year in 2021, we hosted an IPv6 summit and had over 1,000 people talking about IPv6. Who thought that could happen? But we did. And then we provide documents, guidance, and support We're actually developing a zero trust playbook, and this is not intended to duplicate or one up any of the other efforts going on in private and public sectors, but leverage the efforts of ATARC, CISA, OMB, GSA, NASA, or NIST, and others. But we've also created some other documents that have been widely praised. The cloud strategy document, the containerism readiness guide, the multi-cloud and hybrid cloud guide as that we developed last year as well from Karen Balsam. Then we train, the COP provides training to agencies free of charge. And it could be from cloud technologies to network optimization, IPv6 and security. We're looking to grow the program, and last year, we did 30 plus training sessions. We trained over 1,800 people representing more than 1,000 COP members. And as long as you have a .gov or .mil email address, you're free to attend. And then, you know, some of my closing remarks about this next few years within IT, within the federal government. Going forward, data centers will continue to focus on optimization and consolidation, while adhering and supporting federal guidelines for sustainability. I believe that IT is an ecosystem. Given the interconnected nature of data center and cloud optimization, and with other ongoing federal IT modernization efforts, we're constantly spotlighting new administration priorities such as cyber, climate, zero trust, and IPv6. IT modernization is an interconnected web of priorities, and we have to keep the conversation going across initiatives and agencies. I'm going to leave it there, but I want to thank you for attending. Enjoy the summit and have a great day. Reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. That was a great keynote, and I'm sure it's going to be a great event. Up next, we're going to have our first tech talk of the day. We're going to be hearing from Bill Bensing. Bill is a software factory managing architect over at Red Hat. Bill, I invite you to take it away.
All right, morning everybody. Go ahead and share a little screen here real quick. All right, there we go. Webex says everybody can see, so I'll skip with the obligatory question if you can see, and we'll go forward. So everybody, good morning. Thank you very much, Bill Bensing. As Alyssa said, managing architect at Red Hat and for the software factory. The only rule of today in this presentation I have is what I refer to as my Beyonce rule. If you like it, then tweet on it. So if you like the presentation, tweet it. If you have a question, tweet about it. If you think I'm full of it, tweet about it. And if you just simply need a coffee, tweet about the coffee and this presentation at the same time. So as we're getting started, in the next 15 minutes, I want to cover a strategy for Sbomb. We'll cover a diagnosis of the Sbomb problem. We're going to call out two guiding principles around designing an Sbomb approach. And then we're going to talk about two Red Hat partner technologies to get you started right off the bat with either you want to build or buy an Sbomb capability. So let's go ahead and diagnose a bit of this problem. To date, I've been unable to find what I could consider a single trusted source for a comprehensive detail of Sbomb history. Based on my research, software bill of materials started as a way to aggregate data around open source licensing for individual software components of a system. Sbomb seemed to have started around 2010 with the Linux Foundation SPDX. Then in 2017, OWASP, for the Open Web Application Security Project, started the Cyclone DX project. For what it's worth, I did a cursory search on Google Trends. I love Google Trends. A quick Google Trends search for either Sbomb or software bill of material shows that people have been searching these terms on Google at least since 2004. You can see a fairly big spike in 2004, 2005 time range, and then a spike in the past 6-ish to 9 months around the search, which that you would expect that based upon the executive, the EA that came out. But what you'll notice though is the concentration of the searches. So I found this interesting, and looking at primarily the term Sbomb, you'll find it's in really two regions: Washington D.C. and then the Valley. So if I were to interpret this data or create a hypothesis, it seems that the folks that may be more interested in buying the solutions and the ones interested in making those for the buyers are the people searching around Sbomb information. Take that with a grain of salt, but I found that interesting. So there are really two common types of Sbomb formats. So let's dig into those. One is SPDX. SPDX stands for Software Package Data Exchange. Per the Linux Foundation, SPDX was created to provide a common data exchange format for information about the software packages related content so it could be collected and shared. The main focus of SPDX is around, or is and was around, the open source licensing, compliance, and components of the software. Cyclone DX is another popular type. So Cyclone DX is more focused around security and vulnerabilities. It was designed to solve for vulnerability identification, as well as license compliance, but also for outdated component analysis of open source software components. So to give you a bit of a background, when somebody says Sbomb, there are a couple more formats out there, but these are really your two fundamental formats that the industry is starting to revolve around. Let's talk about why it Sbomb. An Sbomb is there to track components of a software system to assess the impact for business or mission based upon constraints. And what are these constraints? Well, licensing restrictions, of course. Use it as a basis to assess compliance with licensing requirements. Next one is known vulnerabilities and exploits. Use it as a basis for continuous analysis for vulnerability and exploits for your system. The third one, though, let's talk about provenance. People probably started hearing some of these words, provenance and pedigree, but provenance, and per Webster Dictionary, provenance is the origin or the source of something. SBOMs can document and can provide a document that links software components back to their origin. And this provenance provides a documented chain of custody. And that's the key around some of the SBOMs and some of the outcomes you want from an SBOM is to be able to provide that chain of that chain of custody for some type of software system or software artifact and the components of those systems. Let's talk about the last one, which is pedigree. So people tend to use provenance and pedigree interchangeably or just call it all provenance, but pedigree is different. And if you go back to the Webster Dictionary, pedigree is the history or lineage of something. So I can see how people, as we're talking about the lineage and or provenance come from as a source, it's easy to see how people confuse these. But really, when you think about pedigree for a software system, before as what SBOM can come in, SBOMs can provide a history of how the software component or the system was derived. So while you look at a chain of custody with its provenance, pedigree looks at how it was derived. So it goes into specifics of that component or that system and how it's been, let's say, built over time or how it's derived, how it was assessed. So there are other SBOM-like formats as well that aid in pedigree and provenance, such as in toto. And when you start, and what you're starting to see is a bit of proliferation of these types of extensions, such as in toto, that can be cross-referenced in their formats. And this is where I find the industry gap in SBOM. Is the SBOM concept can be very confusing right now, just given the relative urgency of a need for solutions, the newness of the concept in industry writ large, not just the newness of the concept, but writ large in industry, and the thought that there should be this sort of one SBOM format to rule them all. My personal hypothesis is like with any technology, it's going to take 3 to 5 years for industry to hit a tipping point for acceptance of some overall standardized approach and not just some single format. But in the meantime, like 3 to 5 years is out, there's a lot of requirements of get SBOM now, get these provenance pedigree, be able to better assess your vulnerabilities and other types of compliance right now. And so you don't really have to wait 3 to 5 years. In the meantime, you can simply get started by leveraging SPDX or Cyclone DX. And right now I want to talk about how we can make that happen. So that's a bit of a diagnosis. Now you have an idea of why SBOM is the problem, sort of where we're coming from, where everybody's coming from when you hear the word SBOM or software build material. So let's go ahead and scope an implementation to this SBOM capability. Let's talk about 2 guiding principles that I see here. First, when it comes to this SBOM, it's a scan once, continuously verify. It's not just about having this document or set of documents called an SBOM. There's nothing significant that happens when the document's sitting there alone. This is a big duh moment, but I'd like to restate that. If you're putting it in some desolate corner of some storage environment, SBOMs don't do you well. what you want to do is you want to look at something like a CIA assessment. And this is our second guiding principle. And when I talk about CIA, I'm not talking about our clandestine CIA. I'm talking about our CISSP, or the Certified Information System Security Professional, the CISP cert. They have a concept called the CIA Triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This CIA Triad is a means, you can use it as a means to score and impact information from an Sbomb on your business. You can use it as a guide for when or how to take action, and more specifically, when not to take action. So scan once, continuously verify. Let's deep dive this. And it's as simple as the name suggests. First, you want to generate an Sbomb for your software component or your software system. At this point of generation, the Sbomb can be used as evidence for an audit. And you can audit the Sbomb to ensure whether it's license or vulnerability compliance. And so this is, think about it in sort of in your CI process, you create an Sbomb. Your second is you want to persist that Sbomb with some storage mechanism that is optimized for querying. So I didn't use just database. It is the concept of the storage mechanism that is optimized for querying. And at the time of generation, we all know that you could potentially have 100% license and vulnerability compliance, and especially if you're going into production. You most likely won't let it in without meeting some license and vulnerability criteria that you accept as reasonable. Although over time, the state of licensing and the state of vulnerabilities we know changes. And you'll get the new vulnerabilities, which is really where the Sbomb comes to shine. So therefore, you need a way to persist those Sbombs so you can continuously evaluate the same way you did at the initial gate in, say, your CI process, your continuous integration process, to get into production. The third step is to establish protocols for this continuous evaluation. So we've scanned it once, we've put it in production. We have this record. This record is now optimized for querying. What we need to do is now establish those protocols. The best evaluation approach is to set frequent scans of your Sbombs. This frequent scan, of course, reassesses how the Sbomb data aligns with policies to find any divergence. This frequent scan gives you the best insight for how your software in production is deviating from the ever-changing baseline that you know is good. So additionally, as we talk about continuous scanning, what we want to look at is ad hoc searching. If a new vulnerability is released or component, you want the ability to ad hoc search to see what's assessed there as possible. So as we start thinking through this continuous evaluation, there are two components. It is the ad hoc or on-demand search or querying for some type of ad hoc purpose, but also this frequent continuous type scanning. So let's go ahead and dig into the CIA Triad here in a second. And the CIA Triad, it's not nefarious. It's definitely not clandestine. What it stands for is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's typically viewed as a way to get primary goals and objectives to secure some set of infrastructure. So when we say confidentiality, what are we talking about? The confidentiality is that concept that it's a measure to ensure protection of secrecy of data, objects, or resources. When we say integrity, what do we mean by integrity? Integrity is the concept of protecting the reliability of data correctness. And then availability. When we talk about availability, what do we mean here? And availability means authorized subjects are granted timely access to uninterrupted access to this data and these objects. So the CIA triangle, and I think this is key. This is why I put it in the guiding principles. It's not just having the Sbomb, and it's also not just assessing it. It's like when you assess it, what are you doing and how are you furthering that assessment to make a decision or to not take an action? The CIA Triad is a tool that you can use to assess the risk of your Sbomb compliance inside your organization. If it's a vulnerability, how does it affect the Triad, and how you prioritize a fix based upon the classification? With that being said, and we got about 2 minutes left, I want to go ahead and tie this together with 2 simple actions that we can do it. So we'll go look at a buy it versus build it approach. But whether you're buying or building an Sbomb capability, it's always important that you're starting with a set of supported continuous integration and delivery components. Things such as OpenShift pipelines and OpenShift GitOps turn your Sbomb investment into this centralized CD platform for your organization, CI/CD and SDLC platform. If you want to learn more about basically the ability just to give an API to somebody, a webhook for their Git repo, so they can be part of a centralized API, centralized SDLC platform using OpenShift pipelines, always feel free to reach out. Some really cool stuff that we have going on there. But let's get more into a buy it. If you want to buy it, Red Hat has a partnership with Sonatype. If you're familiar with the Nexus Artifact Repository, that's one of Sonatype's products. Outside the repository, they also have this component called Nexus IQ, which has a feature called the Nexus Lifecycle As part of your CI process, you can use the Nexus Lifecycle tools to scan the Sbomb and then go put it into the Nexus IQ component and then set continuous scans and ad hoc querying over time so you can achieve what we talked about in the guiding principles. Simple getting a licensing, building onto your existing, and then tacking it onto your existing Nexus tooling and going from there. From a build it perspective, if you're a build it organization, you have the competencies and capabilities to do it, you can check out Sift and Gripe from Red Hat's partner Anchor. You can use Sift in your CI process to generate both SPDX and CycloneDX. And then once they're generated, you can then persist that data into something such as OpenShift Elasticsearch, using Elasticsearch as the search engine for your periodic reporting on Sbombs, as well as your ad hoc search engine for whatever you need there. Again, back to our guiding principles. If you want more details on the build it approach, always feel free to reach out. Just start working on some sequence diagrams and some capabilities there on how you can bring those in cohesively. With that being said, hopefully this gave a bit of demystification on everybody's talking Sbomb. Some of the content probably isn't going to be new, it's just a bit of understanding, but really how do you get started? So if you have any questions about this, always feel free to reach out to your Red Hat representative and let them know Bill Bensing sent you and you want to talk about Sbombs for your organization. So thank you all very much. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Bill, for that great presentation. It's always so great to hear what you guys are doing over there at Red Hat. Up next, we're going to have our first panel of the day. For this panel, we have Lamar Johnson moderating. So Lamar, I'll let you take it away.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Lamar Johnson. I'm a senior tech reporter for Meritalk. And today we will be talking about managing identities in the hybrid cloud environment. We have Ken Myers from GSA with us, as well as Chris Suey from NIH. And I'm just going to let them each introduce themselves. So Ken, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Lamar. Hey, morning, everyone. My name is Ken Myers. I'm the Chief Identity Architect in the GSA Office of Government Policy. So the mission of OGP is to be a partner with OMB and identify those best management practices. And our office specifically focuses on identity, credential, and access management. So part of that is working with various federal agencies and identifying what those best practices are, and then either developing a playbook or sharing those through different governance bodies. And all the playbooks are open source. You can find them at idmanagement.gov or playbooks.idmanagement.gov.
Thanks. And Chris, you mind giving a quick introduction, telling people what you're working on?
Sure. First, I would like to thank ATARC for inviting me to join this panel today for our discussion on identities, cloud environments, and their intersections. My name is Christopher Sibi. I'm a data scientist for the Integrated Infrastructure and Emerging Technologies branch at the NIH's Office of the Director, Office of Data Science Strategy. So at the National Institute of Health, we are composed of 27 ICs or institutes and centers, and we do provide over $32 billion annually in biomedical research grant awards. And we are composed of a workforce of roughly 20,000 staffers, 6,000 of which are research scientists. So I've been with NIH for 10 years now, and I've also worked with other federal government agencies, and I have a strong background in computer science and software engineering solutions, as well as having done doctoral research in bioinformatics and computational biology. I've also performed work in computer forensics, where I received most of my computer security experience, and I'm also an active certified information systems security professional. So our office, the ODSS within NIH, is focused on leading implementations of NIH's strategic plan for data science through scientific, technical, and operational collaborations with our ICs. And we have a mission to catalyze these new capabilities in biomedical data science, both for NIH's intramural and extramural communities. We are also committed to ensuring all data science activities and products supported by NIH adhere to these fair data principles. And this basically means that the data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So my primary responsibilities are in providing program support, coordination, and oversight to a number of these data science programs, several of which I will get into later today, including our Researcher Auth Service, or RAS, which is a cloud-based authentication and authorization service that streamlines our access to NIH's open and controlled data repositories and assets for our researchers in a consistent and a secure and user-friendly manner. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Lamar. And again, thank you. And it's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris and Ken. From there, let's just get right into it. So none of our lives look the same as they did a few years ago. That has led to a major shift in using the hybrid cloud and hybrid cloud environments for agencies. So how has that changed the work you all are doing in terms of like managing those identities? And Ken, let's start with you since you're really managing that across the government.
Yeah, thanks, Lamar. Yeah, so one of the major changes that most organizations, not just the federal government, most agencies had to experience was this new remote, the new remote workforce. So one of the things the ICAM subcommittee did. So the ICAM subcommittee is the government-wide identity body under the Federal CISO Council. They published a cloud identity playbook actually in the past year. This cloud identity playbook actually it looked at various challenges to using cloud identity services. It identified common misconceptions, and then really kind of worked to identify the best practices to get an agency from maybe a purely on-premises, maybe like an Active Directory-based environment to a hybrid infrastructure. So one of the common misconceptions that the group identified was a lot of people think it's either cloud or nothing, right? But most likely, most agencies are already in some type of hybrid infrastructure, whether that's if you're using Office 365, right? That's Azure Active Directory. If you're using some other type of single sign-on service, but we found that most agencies are already in a hybrid infrastructure. And it definitely helped from the remote access perspective. If you look at the Federal Zero Trust Memo, and it talks about implementing phishing-resistant authenticators. So the group also found that one of the least I'll say maybe frictionless, if you want to use that word, approaches to using kind of non-PID phishing-resistant authenticators is having a single sign-on solution. And so that's another aspect that the Cloud Identity Working Group looked at as far as the playbook. Yeah, also within the playbook, they identified like 3 basic capabilities. For Cloud Identity, you can call it an identity as a service and IDaaS. Yeah, there are 3 capabilities that kind of define what an IDaaS was, and it was a cloud directory, a multi-factor authentication component, and then also single sign-on. And so between those 3, that kind of sets your basic cybersecurity level to kind of build on more mature processes, right? And that's really one of the defining pieces of cloud is you're using modern protocols and modern techniques to really advance your infrastructure. And actually, that was another myth there that the group kind of talked about was there's common misconception, or maybe a lot of people say that on-premise is more secure than cloud. And what the group arrived at was it's kind of it depends. I mean, you can't say one is more secure than the other, but one definite feature of using cloud services is that the update cycles may be a little bit faster. You could apply newer methods where if you're using something on premise, maybe it's not as extensible, it's not as adaptable to maybe AI/ML type techniques or using APIs or application processing interfaces. And at least between those 3 capabilities, right, you can really improve the user experience both for your workforce and if you have public users, you can really improve the user experience, but also the security aspects of it also. So one of the main points of this of our cloud identity playbook is really taking a centralized approach in implementing these capabilities. So again, if you look at the zero trust strategy, that's OMB memo 2209, it talks about centralizing identity management functions, right? And so that could mean different things to different agencies. It could mean centralizing access in a single sign-on tool, based on maybe a security boundary. It could mean centralizing other aspects, but there's definitely a best practice in centralizing your services. I would say not specific to identity, but in general also. So back to you, Lamar.
Yeah, Thanks. And Chris, how has the shift affected you all? Also, sorry, I meant to mention this at the top. If you have any questions for Ken and Chris, please post them in the chat. We'll get to those at the end in our Q&A portion of it. But yeah, Chris, back to you.
Yeah, so sure. Thank you, Lamar. And kind of similar to what Ken has already mentioned, the federal government agencies have already been quite familiar and prepared for these type of hybrid environments, basically due to things like existing telework and remote work arrangements. And so, NIH, just like many other federal agencies, are certainly well entrenched in utilizing these VPN technologies and the use of many remote collaboration tools. So, at NIH, we certainly continue to optimize our data network monitoring and authentication architecture. This includes improving our operational security position, as well as enhancing our customer service support facility and expanding out services in multi-cloud environments. And again, kind of what Kenneth alluded to, some of our cloud services are great for certain analytical environments, but not for kind of all of our use cases within the biomedical community. So for example, high performance computing, where we have these very long kind of simulations running for literally weeks or months on end in order to kind of compute these biomolecular systems. And so that's just kind of not feasible from a cost standpoint, typically, that we see with some cloud environments. One thing I'd also like to add, however, is that NIH does have a program called and this is a very long acronym, by the way, it's called STRIDES. It's how we harness the power of our cloud in support of biomedical research. So STRIDES stands for Science and Technology Research Infrastructure for the Discovery, Experimentation, and Sustainability. Essentially, what this is doing is it's allowing NIH ICs or institutes and centers to explore the use of cloud environments to streamline their data use. And it allows them to partner with not just one, but many different cloud platforms based on their needs. And so this is just a way to modernize that biomedical research by reducing that economic and process barriers for a lot of these maybe smaller institutes that don't quite have that infrastructure in place themselves. And so STRIDES basically is a way just for us to create that robust interconnected ecosystem, or data ecosystem that we like to call it, that breaks down these essentially silos of information related to the essential generation, analysis, and sharing of this research data. So essentially, the eligible researchers that can take part in this STRIDES initiative include our intramural researchers and awardees of NIH contracts, as well as our extramural partners.
Got you. And something I want to follow up on from I heard both of you mention a little bit, is that the federal government and specifically both of your agencies had already had experience with this hybrid environment. So what were some unique challenges that came when it came to operating at this sort of scale? But let's start with Chris, because you mentioned that you have those 27 ICs. So what were some of those unique challenges dealing with NIH?
Right. So I'd probably kind of I jumped to our RAS program, which is our researcher auth service. Again, this is a single sign-on solution that we use not just internally with our intramural staffers, but as well as our extramural community. And it's just a way to give that single sign-on experience. And so we had a number of problem cases that we wanted to solve, especially say in the authentication space, where researchers were constantly challenged to provide multiple or duplicative credentials. And so our solution to that was, no matter what preferred credentials those researchers enter, their account identities and attributes are actually transferred. So we have many different identity providers that they can log in through to access many of these federated data resources and compute workspaces. Additionally, in the authorization space, the problems were basically that access to this NIH data were not communicated in a standardized way for many of our researchers inside and outside of NIH. And so what we did was we wanted to comply with open standards to facilitate this interoperability across the NIH data ecosystem. So part of this was making use of the organization GA4GH, which stands for the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health. And we were able to be involved in kind of the standardized infrastructure of authentication and authorization infrastructures, as well as these concepts of how we handle permissions throughout our ecosystem. And then finally, there's the auditing capability. So as many of our platforms, log data and events in their own way, we wanted to be able to standardize some of that data access amongst our cloud environments. And so using our RAS program for their single sign-on experience, we can then trace and log this data in a standard way that protects both our staff and our controlled data assets. And I'll send it back to you.
Got it. And Ken, what are some of the challenges you faced at GSA while you were looking at operating at scale?
Yeah, I would say there's three common challenges, and I mean, they're not specific to GSA, but I would say from talking to various agencies, these were three common challenges. So the first one, and I'll break it down between like technical and programmatic, because I think it's easy to overlook kind of the program things you need in place to get the technical stuff to work. So the first, the kind of technical challenge is just authentication. A lot of agencies were already configured and comfortable with using PIV authentication for desktop, everything having to be on the network, whether that is in the building, on your laptop, or through a VPN. And so that's definitely a challenge, in moving to a hybrid configuration. Very few cloud technologies support certificate-based authentication, which is what PIV card is, right? So that was definitely a challenge in identifying which of your cloud services supported native certificate-based authentication versus where you had to use a single sign-on tool. And actually, the single sign-on tool is the second challenge. So when you use a centralized authentication tool, you are now moving the authentication from at the application now to that single sign-on tool. And so when you do that, it's really on that single sign-on vendor and what types of authenticators they support. So it's kind of linked to challenge one. Does your single sign-on support PIV or smart card authentication or certificate-based authentication? And so while agencies are required to issue a PIV card or personal identity verification card as a primary credential, there was an OMB memo right at the beginning of COVID that authorized agencies to use other types of comparable credentials. And that's really been solidified now in the federal zero trust strategy of using specifically phishing resistant authenticators in use cases where PIV it doesn't work. And those use cases include like mobile or cloud, command line. There's a couple of different use cases there where PIV may not work. And actually in the federal zero trust strategy specifically mentions FIDO2 and web authentication. And actually, so NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, they're updating their special publication on derived credentials to look at a broader variety there. So the third challenge is more of a programmatic. It's a workforce challenge. And so as you're moving to cloud service, as you're implementing a hybrid infrastructure, it's similar to what Chris said about using open protocols, right? It's having your workforce trained and understand how those protocols work, but also how to troubleshoot them when there's an issue. And one common challenge I see is like troubleshooting federation assertions. So if we're talking SAML, which is security assertion markup language, how to troubleshoot that, understanding where is the issue on the application side? Is it with my single sign-on tool? But also more modern assertion protocols like open authentication or OpenID Connect. So definitely workforce training should incorporate these new protocols, these new languages, but also from a security perspective, understanding the weaknesses and how to overcome them. Like from the federation perspective, look at SolarWinds, right? One of the outcomes of SolarWinds was that Active Directory Federation Services was compromised, right? And so that's definitely a training event to understand how the federation was compromised, and then implementing controls to make sure that system and data are now protected. So back to you, Lamar.
Got you. And next, I just want to give you all a chance to sort of brag on the work that you all have been doing. So what are some of the more interesting use cases or a use case that you just want to share with the group of how you've been, that you've been working on recently or that's coming down the pipe? So Ken, let's start with you.
Yeah, actually, so Tom Santucci, the keynote, I'm actually working, our office is working with his group on the Zero Trust playbook. It's actually been a really interesting endeavor so far. And it'll be really interesting to see how that document finally ends up. I mean, our focus is on the identity part. And so it was really taking the requirements and the intent in the federal Zero Trust strategy and kind of breaking that down into hopefully actionable steps that agencies can take in like a bite-sized chunk. I would say related to that, we're also working on an identity lifecycle management playbook. So the latest ICAM policy of OMB was from 2019. And the intent of that memo was to have agencies look at evolving from managing credentials to managing identities. And so the intent of this playbook is really to identify what that means, what are those best practices, and what are the different techniques and processes agencies can implement to evolve from managing credentials to managing identities. And I would say another piece of guidance that we're working on with the ICAM subcommittee is actually around phishing resistant authenticators. Yeah, I've mentioned phishing resistant authenticators a couple times. You know, it's mentioned in the federal Zero Trust strategy, but well, what does that mean, right? When I say phishing resistant authenticator, yeah, what does that mean to you? And you know, it's meant to be a plain language guide. NIST is going to write their own technical standard, but really what we're working on is just a plain language guide to understand. You know, if I come to you and I say my credential is phishing resistant, you can do like a sniff test and say, well, based on this playbook, it might be missing a couple of things. And so actually the ICAM subcommittee is working on that from April to about June. And so that should be a pretty interesting discussion there. Back to Lamar.
Gotcha. And Chris, what are some use cases, some programs you're working on over at NIH that you'd like to share?
Thank you, Lamar. Again, I just want to reiterate kind of our pretty big data science project, and that's just our RAS program, which is that cloud-based authentication and authorization service, essentially just facilitating our access to that NIH open and controlled data assets. One thing I did want to note is that basically we do provide kind of a menu of identity providers that a lot of our platforms, depending on their security positions, can make utilization of. So, you may hear a lot of identity assertion levels. So we certainly support at the minimum level identity assertion 2. And so, that involves a lot of identity proofing. You're looking at other identity providers that may provide more support for identity level 3 in the near future. This would be just kind of an avenue to provide additional levels of protection for a lot of our different programs. We also wanted to provide, the ability for more and more institutes and universities across the nation to make use of RAS as their login source for NIH-controlled data. So we are looking at not just right now, we have identity providers in our NIH login space, but we also make use of login.gov, our ERA, which is our ERA Commons, which is our grant platform. And then this in-common federation, which would then allow us to make use of university credentials for a lot of our researchers that have authorized access to this data. Another big program that we're and this is kind of more in the cloud space, and that's our Strides program. And so a lot of the benefits of this program, in addition to what I had already mentioned before, just includes additional professional services to a lot of our ICs in terms of consultation and technical support, because again, not all these ICs have that large infrastructure, just for various reasons, and in terms of funding. Also in terms of training, because not all of our researchers are familiar with some of the workspaces that may be available within the cloud space. So we want to make sure that that's a secure environment, a user-friendly environment for them to make utilization of. The Strides initiative also, because we try to oversee kind of the platforms amongst their ICs and allow them to have discounts in making use of these cloud services at scale. So it's not just, a very large upfront cost because only one small group's using this particular cloud platform. But now that we've created this infrastructure for, basically picking off of a menu which cloud platform that would fit their needs best and making it cost effective is one of the things that is key to a lot of our ICs. And then finally, just including additional collaborative engagements now that more and more of our ICs are performing cloud computing opportunities that they can kind of take that knowledge from across the research community and find a best way to fit it within their research studies. And I'll send it back to you, Lamar. Thank you very much.
Yep. And all right, so let's take a quick break here, pop in some poll questions. See what. So our first poll question is, how familiar are you with your agency strategies to strengthen federal data management within a hybrid cloud? Sorry. And Ken, Chris, you all can answer if you want, but other than that, we'll just give everyone else a few seconds to answer this one. But after the polls, we're running low on time, so let's run through all the poll questions, and then Ken, Chris, let's close with if people watching are working on their agencies, their organizations, identity management programs, what are some best practices that they should be looking for and that they should be looking to implement within these playbooks? So let's keep going with these polls, and while we do that, Ken and Chris think about that answer. I just second poll question is, in your opinion, how important is strengthening federal data management within a hybrid cloud to the future of strengthening federal cloud? I believe the majority of the group answered the first question moderately familiar when I saw those responses pop up. Let's see how they feel about federal data management. And again, I just want to thank ATARC for having us all here, allowing me to moderate. Ken, Chris, thank you guys for both being here. And yeah, let's see what people say. Very important. And I believe we have one more poll question. I don't think that's too surprising.
Nope, just this too.
Oh, perfect. All right. So Ken, Chris, you've had some time to think about it. Again, if people in the audience are putting together their their identity management playbooks, what are some best practices they need to or should be thinking about? And let's start with Ken.
Yeah. I mean, some best practices to think about is definitely, is leveraging a single sign-on to centralize your access management. A key component of using single sign-on is really the focus on how applications support it. So you want to do some type of analysis on understanding what are your total number of users, or what are your total number of monthly active users, how many applications you have, what types of protocols, assertion protocols those applications support. I mean, another factor of that is definitely federation. Chris mentioned it. In common is a trust framework. So, there's federation that you do inside your agency, but also federation you do outside your agency. So outside your agency is where trust frameworks are important. The federal PKI with your PIV card, that's a trust framework. Chris mentioned in common, that's another trust framework. And so if you're interested in using a trust framework, you can either reach out to our office to get a little better understanding about it. And then I would say the third one is, if you're not using single sign-on today, building the business case to support using a single sign-on, and definitely include kind of the qualitative and quantitative aspects to it to make sure that you have an actual goal of hitting it, a goal of what you're trying to achieve in implementing a single sign-on, and you can use that to maybe expand the use of it within your agency as you centralize your services. So back to you, Lamar.
Thank you, Ken. And Chris, you'll have the last word. What are some best practices?
Yeah, so I mean, again, going on with what myself and kind of talked about quite extensively around the single sign-on, but also that multi-factor authorization. So it's being able to do at least two-factor, maybe going beyond essentially, what you have being a PIV card and what you may or may not be, which is kind of your biometrics. Outside of that, we got things such as making sure that we have a really well-established, at least for us, data access controls. So right now we are looking to expand our centralized data access controls for permissions to these data assets. So right now, as I mentioned, we have controls for our genomics data. We want to start trying to centralize more of our maybe imaging data or behavioral data and making that more controlled within a central area so that we are able to log those data access as well as centralize the way that we are identifying individuals and researchers that have access to that data. A couple of things is that I think it's just very important that, especially for those large organizations that have federated data warehouses, siloed information all across their agency, to make sure that there's a security advisory group in place and there's buy-in with all those agencies around some of those security measures that we want to have in place so that everyone's on the same track. And those are the major ones I have for you. And back to you, Lamar. I think we're over time.
Yep, I think we're at time. So Ken, Chris, thank you once again for being here. Alyssa, I'll pass it back to you. Thank you again to ATARC for having us. And I hope all the attendees have a great rest of your day.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys
very
so
much.
much for that.
Thank you, everybody.
Panel. That was great. Thank you. Up next, we'll be hearing from another one of our tech talks. Maggie Schroeder. Maggie is the director of product marketing, Drupal Cloud over at Acquia. So Maggie, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alyssa. And it's great to meet all of you. As Alyssa said, I'm the director of product marketing, specifically for the Drupal Cloud side of the house at Acquia. And if you don't know Acquia, we are in the digital experience management space, and I focus on the content side of the house. Now, digital experience obviously is concerned with content as well as data. But today I'll be focusing in on a topic that's really near and dear to Acquia, which is talking about composability, both for content and data, as well as security. And so let me bring up some slides and I'll just walk you through a quick talk, keeping it short and sweet here today. So let's go into presentation and I'll walk you through some of what I mean by composability and security, because composability today, really a hot topic and almost is becoming a buzzword, similar to how everyone was saying digital transformation. In the digital experience space, we're now hearing composability again and again. And so really, what is composability and why composability is the first thing that I wanted to address, right? And really, it comes down to an innovation gap, right? We keep doing the same thing over and over again. And it's funny, like insanity, this quote, insanity is the same thing, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's really what's happening, right? We've been using the same methodology for 15 years to build the same monolithic websites. And we're expecting to bridge this innovation gap, right? This gap to the evolving and emerging customer expectations that are changing with the times. And so some of the drawbacks to the legacy architecture that organizations have been using for the past 15 years include developer control over all presentation aspects, right? And you might be thinking to yourself, why is that a drawback? Well, here's the thing, we're expected to do so much more. And if we are focusing all of that energy into developers, right, it doesn't give us the opportunity to leverage all of the talent that exists within our organization. The next one is limited business capabilities, right? So by sticking with the monolithic approach to architecture and delivering experiences to our customers as well as our employees, we're really limiting the capabilities that we have to meet our customers at every phase of their journey through the experiences that we're curating for them. And the next is governance as well as security is super difficult, right? So over the years, experiences that we're creating, whether they're websites or applications, or even experiences across IoT devices, right? It's becoming more and more complex to enforce governance across our experiences as well as security. And then finally, this is all getting worse with scale, right? We are expected to create more and more. And as you create more, every problem that I listed above becomes more and more complex. And so really, there are a couple things that won't change. There's going to be more content. There are going to be more applications. There's going to be more data. And also there are going to be more risks, right? We're going to need to keep creating content and delivering content across different channels to meet our customers on the new devices that they're engaging with. I know myself, I actually purchased an Apple Watch during the pandemic and I haven't been able to take it off since. And also I talk to my Google Home every morning. It's definitely not something that I was doing, 5-10 years ago. And then of course, there are more applications than ever. I know that on my own phone, I have probably like a whole page worth of applications downloaded that again, I wouldn't have been engaging with 5-10 years ago. And then because of all of this content, right, and all the engagement that we have, we're collecting more data than ever before to make these experiences that much better for our customers as well as for our employees, right? Because employees are engaging with applications as well. And finally, again, the hot topic here is that with the evolution of all of this content, all of the data and all of the applications, there are still more security risks than ever before. And so once again, right, we've been taking the same approach to delivering experiences for the past 15 years. It's a monolithic approach. We have really poor reuse of data because of this monolithic approach, right? We're not able to take in the data, analyze it, and then reuse it to optimize experiences as effectively as we would want. These experiences are hard to govern, especially as we scale them, especially as we create more applications and more content. And then of course, there's poor and expensive integrations. It's not just the digital experience that's becoming more complex. It's not just the content management system that's at the core of content creation. It's also the integrations into your content so that you can create a better end-to-end experience for your customers and even for your employees, right? And so really, it's this acceleration of data and content and applications and risk that's driving us to rethink our current approach and shift our approach to architecture. And this is where composability comes in, right? So composability is really an approach to help bridge the innovation gap. It's the approach that will help us to unlock true agility, to ensure that we're, again, delivering content, delivering modern experiences and applications for our customers and employees that are engaging more and more digitally, right? And it's unlocking the ability to do this quickly and to, again, not add any additional resources. I mentioned the developer who's really at the core of creating these experiences. And we're expected to make these experiences that much more robust, right? There's more content, more applications, and more data. And you're expecting your same team to do much, much more than they have ever before. And so there's a lot of power to unlocking different members of the organization to help contribute. And so when I talk about composability, right, there are two things that we can do really to support composability at its core without going into the nitty-gritty here, right? So at its simplest, enabling more business users. So think about your marketers, think about even your HR team, think about anyone who's ever contributed content to the digital experiences, to the digital content that you've created, right? Think about making that easier. And so some of the things that you can implement to make it easier for business users to contribute and help out your hardworking developers are things like low code tools, so that someone who doesn't have coding experience can go in and easily update content. Think about reusable components. So if you take your content that exists on your digital channels, right, and you can take those and create components that are reusable across multiple pages, across multiple sites even, right? It makes it easier to, again, reuse and quickly create experiences, whether they be new sites or new pages. A drag and drop interface, same thing, right? Making it easier for our business users with, again, a drag and drop functionality, but also in context editing, so that you don't have to do all of your editing somewhere where you can't actually see what the final result will look like. And then finally, brand specific components, right? So making sure everything stays standard. And then, of course, making sure all of this is scalable. So being able to manage all of your digital assets from one central location and enforce security and again, different functions across all of those sites and digital content that you have. And I guess just to conclude here, I have two things, right? When you combine these together, you're really unlocking content agility. You're really unlocking the ability for yourself to create experiences quick. And finally, the thing I'll leave you on is a couple of our successful customers here at Acquia who are unlocking the power of composable content today, right? We have Noah Fisheries, really making it easier for content creators and improving user engagement. Mars reducing development time by 50% by taking a composable approach. Alcon delivering multilingual experiences. And of course, Stanley Black & Decker ensuring that they can launch new sites super quickly. And all of this done in a very secure environment. So I know I went a little bit over there, Alyssa. So saw your face pop up. I'll give it a pause here. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much. It's always so good to hear what you guys are doing over at Acquia. Up next, we're going to hear from another one of our tech talks. So if JJ Garcia wants to pop up, JJ is the, sorry, I lost it in my notes. JJ is the solution architect over at Micro Focus Government Solutions. So JJ, I will have you kick it off.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and start. My name is JJ Garcia, and I'm a senior solution architect with Micro Focus. Today, we're going to be talking about managing multi-cloud hybrid environments. Our customers recognize that the tools that they're using are insufficient for managing hybrid IT across multiple cloud and on-premise deployments. IT teams must be agile and have solutions that offer a layer of consistency of operations across the various technologies. This presentation will discuss today's hybrid IT challenges and can be roughly divided into 3 separate value domains, as presented in this slide. Let's take a look at these value domains. Flexible automation. You need to be able to aggregate multiple cloud services into a single catalog. You need to be able to deliver and manage resources using rich no-code interface. You need to provide effective governance to set rules to enforce compliance and track costs and gather optimization recommendations. And finally, you need to be able to publish this to an easy-to-use self-service portal. To automate in a flexible manner, you need to use a master orchestrator. With a master orchestrator, you can sit above individual actions and orchestrated silo tools. You start with adaptive service designs, and then you build below that to flexibly execute that component, enabling effective automation of complete actions and repeatable processes. This will drive dramatic increases in IT staff efficiency, giving IT experts the time to create additional flows to orchestrate much more of the manual repetitive work that IT operations teams face each day. Modern cloud management platforms must make it easier for IT operations teams to automate resource creation and cover a wide range of resource requests. Flexible resource automation allows for design once, order anytime, run anywhere cloud service designs, which are cloud agnostic and with reusable elements. What this means for you is the ability to design a cloud service, then at deployment time, choose the target cloud environment to run the service on. This is the opposite of what most tools offer. They lock every service design by starting with the specification of what a cloud target vendor will be used for a service. This is not what you need. You need the freedom to choose a cloud vendor or multiple cloud vendors due to business criteria and efficiency goals, and not be restricted from a technical constraint. IT needs a platform with showback reporting and slice and dice reports to help prevent overspending, one that can identify and track utilization. IT needs complete cloud spend visibility for multi-cloud in a single pane of glass to ensure consumption that is transparent and within budget. Cloud cost governance means detailed reports and complete cloud spend transparency. This helps IT understand what is happening, prevent overspending, and optimize usage and overall cloud spend. And speaking of cloud spend, IT needs cloud spend insights. Quick summary of cloud spend efficiency should be displayed as a score, evaluating overall cloud spend efficiency. IT needs auto-generated recommendations for reserved instance management. Public cloud costs should be continuously optimized via built-in insights, describing reserved instance utilization. This allows IT to benefit from cost-effective reservation-based prices and avoid overspending on on-demand instances. IT can proactively lower public cloud bill via built-in insights around reserved instances, which are a commitment which you can buy from cloud vendors, where you commit to run an on-demand instance for a specified amount of time. You pay a lot less for that instance. So it's an investment. You make a little extra payment up front to get a big return over the year. A cloud management platform must continuously scan your cloud environment and learn what instances have been in use for a while and suggest reserved instance commitments. Users need to be able to browse the catalog directly via one of the main tiles on the landing page. There they can get recommendations based on popularity and even can see recent history of orders. Users need to see the prices that will be shown back or charged back to them, and eventually land on a request form with dynamically populated values. They can then fill that out, configure options, and finally order the subscription, after which the service will be automatically provisioned by the cloud management platform. Let's talk about how Micro Focus deals with these challenges with our hybrid cloud management X solution. In terms of flexible automation, we allow you to deploy faster and with consistent results. We provide an end-to-end orchestrator and have a huge library of workflows and integrations and support a broad range of platforms. We allow you to reduce the effort and increase customization options by providing a graphical automation UI that allows you to create adaptive reusable service designs. We also allow you to aggregate cloud services in terms of effective governance. We help strengthen compliance. We provide guardrails and budget management. We help you manage your cloud spend by providing reports and generating recommendations. We also provide a single source of truth. This is our configuration management database. It'll track all the CIs that you create with your services. And finally, we empower your end users with an easy-to-use self-service portal, which can be consumed from mobile devices as well. We can help alleviate the stress on IT by providing AI-based searches and a virtual agent that helps end users manage their own service requests and subscriptions by themselves. So let's talk about our market leadership. Forrester has named us one of only 2 leaders, and Research in Action has ranked us #1, and we earned global winner honors. And Gartner has us as a representative vendor. I want to thank you for your time and attention today. My name is JJ Garcia, and my email address is here. Please give me any questions or follow up with me. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, JJ. That was a great presentation. Up next, we're going to hear from another panel. We have 2 more panels left. For this panel, we're going to have Jory Heckman, an ATARC pro at this moderating. So Jory, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Alyssa, for that really kind introduction. And thanks to all you for tuning in here for the, I believe, second panel of the day on securing the hybrid cloud. And we have a great panel to break it down. But just a moment here, it's a little housekeeping. I do want to remind everyone, please, please, please get those questions coming in throughout the session here. The 30 minutes, they go by so quick. And so I want to make sure that we have time throughout the panel, not just rushing at the end to make sure that we get to those questions. So please make sure we get that taken care of. And also we're going to have 2 poll questions coming through the session here. So we will make sure those are addressed so that everyone tuning in gets their CPE credits. I think that's it for all of the housekeeping here. So without any further ado, I will introduce our panel and we'll get right to it here. Panelists, if you just give everyone a little wave once I call your name here. We have Trefania Salzman, the security architect at the Small Business Administration, Lieutenant Kenneth Miltenberger, the branch chief of the Coast Guard's Cyber Blue Team, Bill Kirkendale, the Chief Information Officer for Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency at the District of Columbia, and Brian Rosensteel, the Principal Solutions Architect over at Ping Identity. Everyone, thanks for taking the time here. And we have plenty to dive into here. But just by way of introduction and to get the conversation going here, tell us a little bit more about your agencies. But as part of that introduction, tell me, we're going to get into some of the challenges with the hybrid cloud, but I think to open here, let's talk about the opportunities. What are the opportunities of hybrid cloud, and how does hybrid cloud, and what specifically does hybrid cloud allow your agency to do? Kenneth, we'll turn it over to you first, I believe.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Lieutenant Commander Kenny Miltenberger here. So I'm the branch chief of the Cyber Operational Assessments branch here at Coast Guard Cyber Command. So what we do is I basically am above our red team and blue team. So our cyber blue team does cooperative cybersecurity assessments, so proactive, buying down risk. You might think of it as internal cybersecurity consulting almost. So we'll go out and do assessments. We run enterprise scanning tools. We do web security, mobile security, cloud security. And then I'm also over our cyber red team. So we do cyber threat emulation, really what we would call, if blue team are cooperative assessments, these are more adversarial assessments. So kind of getting in that hacker mindset and testing systems the way an adversary would test them, and not just testing the systems, but testing your defenders, testing your defending systems, and testing your operators. How do you fight the ship in a cyber contested environment? So, talking about hybrid cloud, again, we do assessment missions across all of the Coast Guard's cyber terrain. So that's internal to the Coast Guard. We don't touch commercial or anything like that. We have other teams that do that. But the hybrid cloud is really, really interesting. I think it enables a lot of resiliency for your organization. And so, cloud is a big commitment to throw everything up there. And, there may be times where you want a little more organizational agility. Maybe, maybe you want to change cloud vendors, right? Maybe you want to have the ability to essentially have a more defensive cyber posture, and maybe change the way you deliver those services. So, it definitely gives you the maximum flexibility there. And if you do it right, it'll give you, also kind of the most competitive cloud costs you can get too, I think. And so I think that's a really awesome opportunity. But, there are definitely considerations from the security point of view. It's like, you've increased the complexity of defending this terrain by now instead of having one thing in one place, now you have two things in two places, and that, and so things get a little more complicated. But I'll just leave it there for now, and thanks for having me.
Awesome. Great way to kick it off here, Kenny, and much appreciated. I'm going to toss it over to Bill. Bill, tell us a little bit more about you, your agency, and the opportunities that the hybrid cloud provides.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Kirkendale. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency for the District of Columbia, as Jory said before. We're a federal agency, but with a local mission, so it's kind of unusual in that regard. We've got about 8,000 offenders on supervision on any given day in the District of Columbia. So if you think about, in normal circumstances, the states and local, counties perform those types of responsibilities. We do it for DC. So, of course, I have two flags in my office. I have an American flag and I have a DC flag. We have, a considerable operation, though, about 1,000. We also do pretrial defendant probation, so a couple of thousand folks who are waiting a court right now that are supervised. We have about 1,000 employees, a pretty good footprint, a dozen physical sites in the city, and we've moved to Office 365 and have actually redeveloped our core case management system in Azure and deployed that in the fall. And so moving some assets into virtual machines in Azure, and we're kind of staying with Azure. So to Ken's point before about being able to be portable, I don't know, we have to look at that down the road here. Security is a challenge. We had to adjust some things in this hybrid environment. Most of my assets are still, well, volume wise, are still on-prem, and but we're getting there. Probably reduced our server footprint in half in the past couple of years, a physical server, and I think we probably have more virtual servers though now. So it's using Security and Compliance Center in Microsoft, become pretty proficient with that. Also for using that for records management. So there's a lot of kind of continuity going on there. In fact, they moved records management into my shop. So we got a little bits and pieces of the zero trust sort of pillars here and there, and spending a lot of time on that lately. But for the most part, it's been a cultural sort of challenge and change management and things like that to adapt. But the opportunities are immense already. Our new case management application spins circles around the previous application, and taking advantage of the services and so forth that are in Azure and that are voluminous. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Bill. And a preview of things to come here in terms of records, zero trust, and the culture change part of things. We'll get to that further down in the conversation here. But Trefenia, let's hear a little bit more about you and SBA. Small is in the agency title, but it's obviously big mission. So let's hear more about that.
Yeah, my name is Trefenia Flynn Salzman. So I'm one of the security architects at the SBA in the OCIO in that office. And I provide the support and the leadership for the initiatives for Zero Trust and for SOAR specifically. Those are my two babies there. And that's all about, with the move from on-prem to the cloud, there's definitely been some hybrid cloud and figuring out what that looks like and then how to secure it. And then taking into consideration the new way of security, and that's zero trust. That's looking at different applications, different strategies that we haven't necessarily looked at in the past. So it's definitely been something that's been challenging, to say the least, but I think it'll be worth it.
Awesome. And Brian over at Ping Identity, let's hear more from perhaps the vendor perspective and a more zoomed out view. What are the opportunities of hybrid cloud?
Yeah, so thank you, and glad to be here. So again, my name is Brian Rosensteel. I'm the federal principal architect over at Ping Identity. And Ping Identity, it's in the name, right? We deal with identity, we deal with identity systems, and really looking at that identity holistically. Right, so not just the person behind the keyboard, but all the different elements involved. Now, what's interesting is one of the things that stays consistent in that move from full on-prem, and of course, I think back to my days where I was directly on site engineering with federal government inside of what we call the hamster cage, right? So I've got a traditional PKI background dealing with the various certificate authorities and go through multiple doors before you get into there, right? Lock and key in that physical perimeter. As we move from full on-prem deployments towards more and more modernization efforts that are embracing the cloud, the one thing that stays consistent is that identity aspect, right? It's identity's always been the perimeter, and more it's becoming the emphasis of as people say it's the new perimeter, but it's becoming more relevant, especially when we start looking at zero trust. Identity is identified as its own pillar. Of course, we like to say that those pillars aren't separate, right? Your data, your network, your identity, they're not separate elements. They're all working together. And so when we look at a hybrid system, we have to understand, what does that actually mean? What does hybrid mean? It's not just some servers are up in the cloud, some servers are down on premise, but how do those systems interact? how do we bridge trust across them? And how do we do it in a way with minimal disruption and minimal friction for an end user?
Awesome. Awesome. Great points there, Brian. Thank you for that. And so that was a pretty good summation of the opportunities here. Let's switch over to the challenges, because that's kind of the whole name of the game here. And the title of this panel is, the challenges of securing the hybrid cloud and making sure that attack surface is mitigated as much as possible here. What are you guys seeing as some of the current challenges that you're running across when it comes to securing the hybrid cloud? I'll go in reverse order here. Brian, let's hear about that.
Sure. So, again, from that identity aspect, I'm going to use an old school term of PK enablement, right? So we're 20 years, more than 20 years for some organizations down the line of adopting pretty much the strongest enterprise scalable authenticator with PIV and CAC and PKI. And the challenge has always been, hey, let's make those work with every application. And we had to go application by application to enable those. And then we got to a point where we said, okay, well, we can start clustering things together. And, we kind of made it where, well, when you're on the network, we've done the authentication, you're good to go. Those assumptions and those connectivities start to resurface when we shift over to where now we're starting to leverage cloud applications. Well, I don't have this application under my control. It's not my custom application, right? Maybe I'm leveraging, a vendor cloud product and getting them to support my authenticator or getting them to support authentication and authorizations in the way that I want them to, right? Extending beyond just authentication, but looking at more of those zero trust elements. That's a real challenge, right? You inherently sort of give up some of that control over that application in this shift. And that's very daunting. So one of the things that we actually see this in the recent memorandum back in January, right? Memorandum 2209, is they talk about needing to have central management over your identity, needing to use those phishing resistant authenticators that I've already talked about. And then the last part of that identity piece is shifting from just role-based access to attribute-based access. Well, how do you do that in a cloud environment? And again, that answer is, at least we think, being able to do a little bit of a smarter way that you approach identity rather than doing it from an application by application basis. Instead, switch your model over to some type of central environment, right? So from a zero trust aspect, we call those, the policy decision point, the policy enforcement points. Do it there. And then from that's where you make your connectivities out to the cloud environment or to your on-premise environment. But yeah, that's so easy for me to say, but planning that and executing that, that's a challenge that we're working with multiple organizations now to be able to accomplish.
Okay, great. Trifenia, building off that, perhaps, what are some of the challenges that are unique to hybrid cloud that SBA is tackling?
I would say, so a couple of things that are actually non-technical. The first is budget, because you're probably going to, at least in my experience, like if you're moving identity providers, you're probably going to have parallel systems for a period of time. And that is costly. So being able to communicate that to leadership and everyone else to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as the end goal, that has been, that can be a challenge. And then also the security culture around moving from protecting something that you can physically, our engineers can physically walk into your data center and put their hands on the server rack and say, this is protected. And moving from that mentality to not being able to walk into a data center and physically secure that data. So it's been a bit of a culture shift and figuring out, okay, who are the resources that we need to bring onto the team so that they can better serve this initiative of protecting the hybrid cloud, because you need both in order to make this successful. And sometimes you're speaking different languages, but at the end of the day, you're protecting the data, you're protecting your identities, and it's just how we get there that has, that's been the challenge.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for that, Trifenia. And
Mhm.
Bill, I remember you saying in your intro that you were bringing up the culture change piece of things too, and that potentially being a challenge. Whether it's the culture change piece of things or things more broadly, tell us a little bit more about the challenges of the hybrid cloud over where you're at.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're getting over some of the hurdles, but it's change management, for example, we've got our DevOps environment, and we making changes every day. It's agile. We're changing the application every day. We're not about to put those changes through a weekly CCB process, right? So just adapting those folks and integrating security into that flow on a daily basis, and that's tricky. So that really requires, educating the all the way down to the developers, but certainly project managers, the deployment operators, and testers. So, there's that piece. There's also sort of the bigger, picture and understanding some of the things that Fanny said, and then also where we want to go. I mean, we've got a bunch of branch offices, right, so to speak, in the city here. We've got this remote thing is just blown out of proportion. We're only coming in right now 3 days every other week, and that just started back up again a couple of weeks ago. So, but it's certainly, the remote thing is here to stay. And we have to come in through our VPN and then go right back out again through the internet connection. And so, making these applications, these services available from just any old internet connection, and connecting with something along the lines of what Brian has just spoke about, to perform that authentication, for lack of a better word, but all that is included there, and of course all the rest of the pillars of the zero trust capability, so that we in fact know that that's the person trying to access. I mean, when we go to our Apple devices, and I've got like 3 of them, and I try to log in from one, or my kids are on the family plan, and oh, this device wants to log in, and so on and so forth. Facebook, you logged in from Baltimore, is that you? Things like that. So we don't have that in place right now. We're using PIV, but we want to be able in a position to do that. So those opportunities. But so for my folks, thinking a little bit bigger, a little grander, and making those analogies to your personal situation, which has always kind of been the case. Your personal situation seems to evolve a little bit quicker than we do in our corporate world. But so that's part of it. And then I personally think that there's still some room to be desired. What's the cliche? I don't know. Some room for growth in guidance. I remember practicing security in 2002, and I think that's when the first 853 draft came out. And I was like, Eureka, finally, it's organized into some, form that we can kind of operate from, 17 families or whatever it was at the time. Might have been 16. I don't know. And I just jumped on the draft immediately, working for a consultancy to the federal government, and working doing CNA and stuff like that. So we using those things, and then 853A, and doing the assessments, and so some of that guidance is still remains to be produced, and that will be very helpful once it is.
All right, great. Thanks for that, Bill. And Kenneth, over to you. Cyber red team, cyber blue team. I imagine this keeps you pretty busy, the security side of things. What's top of mind for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I love what Trifenia said about culture, and what Bill said about kind of guidance there. So, I think hybrid cloud there, is kind of in a unique spot. So, from my perspective, we're not the compliance people. We're not the risk management framework people that says just check these boxes. And so, the culture battle we fight is, if I'm a system owner and I check all these boxes for risk management framework, then I'm secure and good to go. But the process doesn't enforce best practices, and when your guidance and doctrine, like Bill said, isn't updated, then you kind of have people flying on their own. And so, one of the culture things we face is, internally, especially when it comes to cloud and hybrid cloud, is, the thought is, well, just point the scanners at those 2 IP ranges now. And you're like, no, it's not that easy. So, it's a much bigger, more complex picture there. And so some of it's kind of the internal piece of of kind of understanding the implications of these new technology sets and providing the training, education, and guidance for our people who are developing these things, but also for people like my workforce to also understand. So that's kind of the challenge too, is from, the ability to assess cloud environments and stuff like that. We're very lucky that we have a very active Coast Guard Reserve team whose full-time jobs are working in industry, like literally working for Disney, working for Amazon Web Services. So, they're a lot more ahead of us, kind of exposed to some new concepts in security and information technology. And so, all that to say is, some things that we've seen that can use improvement with respect to hybrid cloud is, obviously the culture there and the kind of practical mindset, but from a very tactical point of view is good automation. Do automation well. Automation is your friend. It can make things easy because cloud and hybrid cloud can get very complicated when you're deploying to 29 zones, within AWS, within Azure, within Google, especially when you're maybe multi-cloud or something like that. And so if you're not automating all your configuration, your controls, your security, you're going to end up with this horrible mess that you're going to have to go back to and update each individual little place you've deployed somewhere. And that's not a good use of your time. And it's not a good way to secure your environment. And so, I think some of this stuff can be improved through guidance saying, hey, it's best practice to do automation here, here, and there for your configuration for, whatever cloud accounts, zones, whatever you want to call them. But, I think our challenge is kind of both the compliance, the guidance, and the culture, and then the workforce is, again, federal government, we're competing for that talented cyber workforce that everyone wants. So, how do we give our folks the tools to succeed and understand these things? And at the end of the day, how do we secure the enterprise? So that's kind of, high level of what I've been thinking about.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of great thoughts there. And I want to pull on that thread a little bit more, the automation workforce piece of things, because, Kenneth, you raised a great point. There's a finite of FTEs out there. The workforce is, they go home at the end of the day. They have to sleep, they have to take breaks. The automation doesn't have to do that. And so that's kind of the game changer. I'll just throw it out to the rest of the panel here if they want to take the automation thing and maybe, if it resonates with them, speak a little bit more to, the need for automation or what you guys are doing in terms of automation.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Bill. Do you want to go ahead?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the initiatives that I'm working on, SOAR, the security orchestration and automated response. So a lot of times that is integrations with some of our cloud applications, or could be an on-prem application. So that's been very interesting to figure out. But I would recommend, if you are trying to automate something, that you're not trying to automate like the entire workflow, you're trying to automate a task. So you need to define what that task is. So a lot of times automation gets thrown around and saying, oh, you can automate everything and have all these workflows automated. And in theory, yes, but you have to break it down first. Talk to your security operations center, talk to your engineers, and actually get the specific task, and then you can automate that. So that's what we're working on internally at the SBA. Is we have specific tasks outlined, we have use cases outlined, and then we're applying it into our SOAR platform to be able to automate that, whether that's through an on-prem solution or utilizing a cloud application.
Okay, great. Any takers on the automation piece?
I was just going to say that, I mean, we're, zero trust is is so key and critical to, the cloud part of this hybrid business here. In fact, as I mentioned before, this hybrid idea there's a hybrid thing going on with zero trust and the ongoing authorization, sort of traditional and conventional processes that are going on. But one of the things that what we're going to do, because we have Office 365 in the cloud right now and this application in Azure. And those are pretty much it. We're going to target those two and go after the zero trust, pillars, principles, and so forth with those two, starting with Office 365 and email and so forth. And, and learn a bunch. And also have as one of those principles of, attainment of zero trust automation. So one of the principles, so we're always checking the box. Okay, so how does automation fit in here? How can we automate some of this? What is the level of effort that's going to, come down the road in terms of manual things? And what tools are out there? What types of, what does the marketplace have to help us with this, that kind of stuff?
Okay, great. Well, I do want to make sure we get a quick temperature check from the audience here. Alyssa, if we could go to poll question number 1. In your opinion, how important is securing the hybrid cloud? Oh man, if like the majority says not important, do we just immediately close the panel down? Do we? Sorry, it's not important.
We just end the webinar.
I think we go into a little bit of security 101 if
yeah, that's the optimistic way. Okay. Oh, thank you. 96% very important. There's a reason we're here, guys. That's it's very encouraging. And we'll go to number 2 here as the second temperature check from the audience. How familiar are you with your agency strategies for securing the hybrid cloud? All right, I'll be a little nicer to the audience. If they don't know, we can educate them. It's okay to not know everything. So
I think what you're talking about, I think what the intent here is the continuity of, of the hybrid cloud between your on-prem and your cloud situation. I mean, that's the thing that you're looking, how important is that continuity?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's such an
And is your
important
agency
part.
leaning forward with guidance for hybrid cloud as well? Are you playing catch up, or is there a strategy in place? I think that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See what we got here. A little bit of everything all over the map here. 52% say moderately familiar. 14% say very familiar. All right, I can live with those results.
I think that's encouraging too. So that goes back to what Trifinia was talking about with culture, right? So, one of the central components of zero trust is centralization, right, around many different things. And so one of the bigger challenges is actually understanding, hey, what's your organization doing, and making sure that visibility is across the organization, right? That's a big difference from where we've been in the past, and what there's some, I forget the name of the law or something like that that someone came up with, but basically your IT infrastructure is going to mirror your organizational structure, and so if you don't have that central communication, how can you ever expect to have centralization of policies and securities and deployment? So I'm encouraged by that, Paul. I think that's the right direction.
Awesome. Well, it's hard to believe, but we're already drawing close to time here. I feel we just got started, but I'll do a quick lightning round and give everyone an opportunity to give some final impressions here. Let's do a different order than the last time. Trifinia, let's start with you. What are your closing thoughts you'd like to leave with the audience?
If I could just be encouraging, it's not easy with hybrid cloud. I would reach out to your other agencies, get involved in the ATARC working groups. There's some really great resources. Also, don't be afraid to email people specifically. I know when I was tasked with zero trust, I hounded a bunch of people and just emailed a bunch of people to get their thoughts and opinions and just learn as much as possible. So I would encourage others to do that as well.
Okay, great. And Bill, over to you. Last impressions here, last thoughts.
Well, sort of echoing what Trifinia said, collaboration and banging our heads together is going to be important as we evolve this and come up with really good ideas and how to, trim some of the edges and some of the, the fat from going forward with this thing, because I see right now that there's a lot of fat and that needs to be trimmed, and just cutting to the chase and getting to the, it's, it's understandable because we're in the middle of a revolution pretty much. So.
Yeah. And Kenneth, over to you.
Sure thing. So again, sorry for coming from here live from my car. No webcams in my building, but one thing I wanted to say was from really the security watch operations perspective is that with respect to hybrid cloud, try and simplify and condense the number of tools your operators need to understand and sort through. So it's like, okay, well, I have this pane of glass if we're on Azure, we have this one if it's Google Cloud, we have this one for on-prem, we have this one for high side, and so that can get really complicated, and the correlation and detection of events can get maybe a little muddled if you're not condensing and centralizing a lot of that information for your folks. So to the extent possible, and it could potentially be a cost driver, but I think it would help. It helps your incident response and detection type capabilities for hybrid cloud. Is again simplify. If you can integrate it into your existing security event management system, great. If you can just reduce the number of those kind of things for your people, I think that's a really good way to actively defend. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And Brian, you get the final word here. Take us away with the closing sentiments here.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I agree with everything that was said, and there's not a lot that I could add. I think the only thing I would add is, again, this is a hard challenge, and it's not going to be easy, and there's not going to be a simple silver bullet. And of course, I know a lot of people, they want to do that push towards the cloud, and there's a lot of benefits with it, but we're always going to have things, especially in the federal government, that are going to require that hybrid nature, some of those on-prem, right? I always joke about, air gap things. If you build a data center, at the bottom of the ocean, true air gap. The reality is the federal government actually has use cases like that. They're called submarines, right? So, the complexity that we have is going to dictate certain use cases that aren't going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. So being able to understand, raise those, find those stakeholders, bring them as early as possible, and understand those challenges helps you as you do this move, as you do this modernization. And then, to Kenneth, your point, figuring out what tools simplify that process so you don't have, a disjointed set of 50 different things that with your limited, administrative personnel have to then manage. So, and again, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, Brian, thanks for being here. Thanks to all of our panelists for being here. And let's give them a virtual round of applause here for doing such a great job. And Alyssa, back over to you.
I forgot I was on mute. So thank you guys. That was a great panel. Full of so much insight. Up next, we're going to hear from another tech talk, Greg LePace. Greg is the Federal Systems Architect over at Nutanix. So Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. And let me share my screen here. All right. Thank you everyone for having me. My name is Greg LePace. I'm a systems architect team lead here at Nutanix Federal. And today we're going to talk about how we are solving the database complexity problem. So when we look at the key trends that are driving government education institutions to increase adoption of databases as a service, first, the skyrocketing demand for applications. We hear this from every customer. Applications use databases. And in fact, many applications use more than one database. Even as organizations shift their application development to microservices like Docker and Kubernetes, these applications continue to use databases, and many of them need databases for data persistence. Second, there continues to be a growing need to support more and more database engines. In the past, the applications were designed around the organization's database engine, like SQL or Oracle. But today, the application framework and the developer determines the best engine that best suits the application. In addition, more and more applications are starting to use open source databases like Postgres and MongoDB, just to name a couple, with most existing applications still using proprietary databases like Oracle and SQL Server. The bottom line is that IT leaders want to be sure their developers and DBA's times are spent wisely. And all these trends have led to the increasing need for database as a service. What are our customers are asking for? What problems are we trying to solve? Reducing risk and effort and cost of operating thousands of databases. Providing compliance, best practices, organizational standards and consistent deployments across your on-prem and public clouds. Maintain business requirements across security and high availability and disaster recovery. Eliminate database sprawl and unnecessary storage consumption from clones and copies of databases. Provide a self-service capability to allow your internal teams to use databases without involving database admins. And most importantly, is retain full control over your database servers. So let's start with the right foundation, the platform where databases can be provisioned, managed, and secured. The Nutanix Cloud Platform has become the most popular hyperconverged solution in the market due to its distributed systems architecture, which provides unlimited scalability and high performance and unmatched resiliency. Nutanix converges the entire data center stack, including compute, the storage, networking, and virtualization. Complex and expensive legacy infrastructure is replaced by Nutanix running on state-of-the-art industry standard servers that enable enterprises to start small and scale one node at a time. Giving you that single console and API across all of your environments. Zero downtime upgrades across the entire stack. Maximum performance with our data locality. And then Nutanix is always protecting your data with our resilient and self-healing architecture. So Nutanix Database Service is a database as a service for your enterprise cloud. Nutanix Cloud Platform provides the best of both worlds, the power of HCI architecture and operational simplicity of database management services. Meet demands and the rapid growth and scale while managing databases across all clouds from a single pane of glass. Nutanix Database Service enables small, nimble teams to easily manage large fleets of databases using a single console and API. This frees their time and skills to focus on most critical databases. Replace tedious and error-prone manual database operations with intelligent automation, operational simplicity for cloning, patching, database backup recover to help free up your evenings and also weekends. Manage both new and already deployed databases while still maintaining full control of your database servers. Increase your database provisioning speed with one-click operations, enable database standards, integrate best practices, and deliver consistent performance and highly available deployments. So one of the huge benefits of HCI is when nodes are added to a cluster, the storage performance increases along with the storage capacity. And with the advanced HCI solution like Nutanix, not only does storage performance increase, but it increases linearly so that your applications see consistently high performance as they scale out over time. One of the reasons this is possible is because of our data locality. When data is written by an application, one copy is stored on the same node as the application, so it can be retrieved without needing access to the network. Not only ensures the lowest possible latency, but it prevents the network from becoming congested. And this is even for large cluster sizes. So the world started with highly customizable management databases, but without the benefits of automation. DBAs were configuring the OS, the database, settings and all of that. And then automation from public cloud addressed self-service, but DBA and development teams lost control in that process. So Nutanix fills that gap by enabling benefits of database as a service and retaining high levels of control. And then when we look across the database as a service landscape, we're seeing like basically 4 types of vendors. The first type is the cloud vendor, database as a service. Typically these solutions are limited to the actual cloud vendor itself, but support multiple database engines. The second type we're seeing is the DB vendors, database as a service offering. which gives you support for multiple clouds, but limited to a single database engine. The third type, which is our multi-cloud database as a service, which a lot of these vendors are new to the market and really only support mostly open source database engines with limited support of proprietary database engines. The last type is hybrid cloud, multi-cloud database as a service. So Nutanix Database Services provides support for all clouds, on-prem, colo, all your public clouds, the gov cloud, with no limitations. Nutanix Database Services enables IT teams to manage disparate databases on one management and control plane. What this means is organizations do not need specialists for each database they use, and they are managed on a single dashboard. So Nutanix Database Services is solving the database complexity problem and creating positive business outcomes. But the proof is here in our value-based POV. These are numbers that our customers are sharing with us. As you can see, the value is there. We even partnered with Forrester to conduct a survey with some of our customers. And these are some of the numbers that our customers shared with us. Things like increased speed of database provisioning, decreased storage requirements for copies and backups, up to 60%. Automated database patching and management avoids losses over 35,000 per hour. All of these savings help deliver ROI numbers that you see here. And I suggest that you go out to the Forrester site and look this up for yourself. Now, if you want to experience the Nutanix Database Services for yourself, just head to nutanix.com/test-mbv. Take a guided tour through the first steps of simplifying and automating your database management lifecycle. Deep dive into daily database operations with helpful tutorials that make you managing your databases a breeze. And thank you. Once again, I'm Greg LePace, and thank you for having me, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was a great presentation. Up next, we're going to hear from Drew Vermette. Drew is the SVP Cloud Transformation over at Pluralsight. So Drew, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, hello. Hey, and welcome to this session on talent transformation as part of the 2022 Hybrid Cloud Virtual Summit. So thrilled to be here. Again, my name is Drew Vermette. I'm head of enterprise strategy at Pluralsight. Look, today I'm going to share with you 3 things that you should know about the current state of cloud adoption. And more importantly, 3 things that you can do. All right, so I've spent over 20 years in technology leadership. I was actually director of cloud engineering and operations while working at Capital One. I helped build their cloud center of excellence and spearheaded the initial migration of applications to AWS. And along the way, I earned a patent for measuring our cloud maturity. And just for reference, Capital One just shuttered the last of their private data centers, becoming the first bank to be operating 100% in the public cloud. So I learned a lot from the journey, and I'm here to share some insights in hopes of accelerating and scaling your efforts beyond the early successes. The goal is really creating a sustainable transition to this new operating model. The bottom line is that you need to be spending as much time migrating talent to the cloud as you are migrating applications to the cloud. All right, so what are the 3 things that you should know about the current state of cloud transformation? Number 1, cloud transformation efforts worldwide are stalling due to a lack of talent. Actually, a recent Gartner analysis predicted that through 2022, insufficient cloud skills will delay half of all migrations to the cloud by 2 years or more. Number 2, there is a serious disconnect between organizations and employees when it comes to cloud learning and development programs. We know that 80% of leaders are finding it easier to upskill existing talent than to hire for new skills. We also know that 94% of employees are more likely to stay long-term with an organization who actually invest in their career through skills development. The disconnect is that only 56% of organizations have an actionable and programmatic plan to skill up their workforce in preparation for their cloud transformation. Number 3 thing, Organizations that aren't investing in cloud transformation as a strategic lever will be left behind. History is littered with organizations which fail to respond appropriately to the demands of change, right? So we analyze a sample set of more than 90 public and private companies in numerous industries across 20 different dimensions to determine their maturity and their commitment to cloud. What we found was that transformational stage companies were more than 15 percentage points ahead in growth compared to tactical stage companies. Although a majority of organizations are actually migrating to the cloud, most are not exploiting the cloud to its full extent. Look, the choices you're making right now, along with the speed of your execution, is going to dictate whether you succeed or fail in the next 3 to 5 years. So given those 3 insights on the current state of cloud adoption, here are 3 things that you can be doing right now to help accelerate the transition of your organization from this tactical mindset into a transformational leader, starting with the most important strategic advantage that you have, your people. Okay. Number 1, invest in cloud literacy with certifications. Cloud is a culture and there is a language. Everyone needs to be able to talk cloud. Everyone. You need to be able to have people that can speak the language of the new tribe. VPC, EC2, EBS, ELB, and RDS should not be foreign terms. Cloud certifications are a great way to do this. They're recognized by the industry as a standard way to validate cloud skills, while it provides your employees a little bit of a what's in it for me, since there is inherent value associated with this achievement. Well, just to be clear, I recognize that cloud certifications can be viewed as a vanity metric. But if every single person within your agency was certified on your predominant cloud provider, would things be different? Of course they would. Well, don't you want things to be different? Then why isn't everyone certified, right? It's an easy place to start and a great way to build momentum to break through the inertia of legacy mindsets. So while I was leading cloud talent transformation at Capital One, 3% of everyone in the world who is certified on AWS worked at Capital One. This was a direct result of our investment in certifications for both employee retention and talent transformation. Number 2, evolve from cloud literacy to cloud fluency with hands-on learning. You need to apply the language you've learned towards outcomes with hands-on experience. It's absolutely essential for evolving and transforming the workforce. A best practice for gaining hands-on experience is with these fun, easy, outcome-based labs and projects. This is not about creating hackathons that are geared towards your 10X engineers. Instead, this should be about democratizing skills development with accessible projects that breaks through the glass of the cloud provider console. Like, for example, building a static website on Amazon S3 is a very simple outcome-based project that shows how quickly someone can translate intent into execution using cloud computing. The goal is to engage individuals with a simple project that connects the dots between the new language and outcomes. Okay, number 3, critical mass of cloud fluency is essential to achieve a sustainable transition to this new operating model. You will never get out of the echo chamber of your cloud center of excellence until you transition the mindset to a cloud center of enablement. Shift from consumers of talent to creators of talent. Many of you are probably familiar with Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, from product adoption from early adopters to the early majority. It basically shows that unless you reach an inflection point that allows you to cross that chasm, your product is doomed to fail. In a similar manner, enterprises must reach critical mass of cloud fluency at scale in order to create enough momentum to cross the chasm between those early adopters and the majority. Critical mass is required to break through the historical inertia of legacy mindsets. Without cloud fluency at scale, you'll never achieve the return on your cloud investments. An easy way to create critical mass is by incubating learning communities built around the certification process. So like while at Capital One, we had hundreds of individuals using A Cloud Guru certification content in these boot camp style cohorts, using a common cadence to build a common language. right? This approach helped to seed and incubate learning communities that became both scalable and sustainable, and ultimately created the cloud culture and skills, which is now delivering on strategic outcomes. Again, focus as much time migrating talent to the cloud as you are migrating applications to the cloud. Like, I hope you gained a few insights during this quick session that can help you and your organization achieve strategic outcomes by, one, using certifications to establish cloud literacy, two, using hands-on labs and projects to create cloud fluency, and three, achieving critical mass with learning communities to create that sustainable transition to the new operating model. Thanks for joining, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to connect with everybody soon. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Drew. That was a great presentation. Up next, we're going to hear from our last panel of the day. For this, we're going to have Chris Oglesby moderate. Chris is the chair of ATARC's Cloud and Infrastructure Mission Area Working Group, as well as our co-host for our podcast series, Cloud and Coffee. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Alyssa. Before we begin, I just want to encourage the audience to submit questions. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom panel there. If you could, we'll get to those throughout the discussion. Also, there's poll questions that will be coming through. Please ensure that you respond to those so that way we make sure that we continue with the CPE credits that are available on this program. I'd like to introduce our panelists. As I call your name, actually, if you wouldn't mind, for those that are on the phone, just maybe giving your title and who you're with, so that way they can piece your voice to your name. So first, Brian Merrick.
Hi, good afternoon. Happy to join and really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, I'm Brian Merrick. I'm the Director of Cloud Programs at the Department of State. Basically, in our organizational construct, we've set up a multi-vendor, multi-cloud environment that basically provides shared platform as a service and enterprise application development services across our 34 bureaus and 275 posts.
Great, thank you. Dave Catanoso.
Hi, Dave Catanoso. I'm the Acting Director of Application Hosting, Cloud and Edge Services for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And then we're setting up a new construct which expanded our Enterprise Cloud Solution Office. We're now combining several teams under my new organization that's going to combine our cloud effort, our on-prem effort, some of our platform efforts that we're building on top of the cloud to kind of put a better organizational structure to provide better customer service and ultimately delivery of services to veterans. So that's what we're doing at Veterans Affairs.
Awesome, thanks, Dave. Walt Mikesh.
Hey, Walter Makish, good to be with you all. I'm the Vice President for Federal at Pure Storage. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So one of the things that we've talked about a lot through the Cloud and Coffee podcast is the definition of things. And I think we just heard Drew actually talk about, as organizations evolve, it is tough really kind of coming up with, are we all talking about the same thing when we use, use the different terms that are out there. So I'd like to kind of throw out, to the panels, just from a definition, just a base definition, how as we kind of go through the rest of this conversation, do we define hybrid and multi-cloud? Walt, do you want to take the first stab at that?
Yeah, I think I think the difference is cohesion, right? I mean, I think that when it comes to hybrid cloud, the ability to share data between the clouds and not actually for the whether you're a developer or an end user to be able to feel the difference as you move from cloud to cloud is when you're truly in a hybrid environment versus when you have multi-clouds. You're really focused on keeping the data potentially interoperating between your on-prem and those singular cloud environments, but not shifting from cloud to cloud.
Dave?
Probably do it a little differently. Probably could spend all day in the faculty lounge trying to debate this, but
yeah. Well, just so you know, Alyssa has not given me an end time, so we can go for as long as you want.
So hybrid to me means using more than one type of solution. So whether it be two different CSPs or CSP and on-prem or CSP and a SaaS or some combination of several of those. And multi-cloud is leveraging more than one CSP to solve problems. So whether it's CSPs in our enterprise cloud or in combination with our SaaS providers, that would be multi-cloud from my perspective.
Okay, awesome, thanks. And Brian.
Yeah, for us, we sort of look at hybrid in terms of the solution set. So any solution where we're basically leveraging a lot of on-prem capability combined with cloud capabilities is really how we're looking at that in context. And then for us, multi-cloud, certainly, we're looking at that from a platform standpoint, having multiple pieces that then can make up that solution from a public cloud standpoint and contribute to that.
Okay, awesome. So now we've level set on that. One of the big things that we talk a lot about in our cloud and infrastructure mission area is data, right? And in the world today, everything is pushing data, to the point where organizations struggle, I think, at times. But so starting with kind of an in-depth question, in your opinion, what are some of the best strategies for managing data within a hybrid and a multi-cloud federal workforce? And we'll start, Brian, if you want to.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is quickly becoming a highly complex topic. So there's certainly the people aspect, the policy aspect, and the technical aspect. From the people side, part of the challenge that we've started running into is having the breadth of skill sets that can actually do a lot of the data analytic work and make sure that we have good data dictionaries in place for all the different data sets and systems that are out there. We do have a chief data officer that operates under the Undersecretary for Management, and that's really been crucial in trying to really push that as a priority across the department. As well on the policy side, being able to address the need to share data and how that data share works. We're not unlike many agencies where we operate under different legal parameters based on the type of mission activity that we do. In the past, as data was more closely linked with a system set, it was pretty simple to identify. Usually the system owner, data owner, pretty much the same person. Nowadays, it's a lot more complex. And so we can have the same data element that can transition many different legal parameters as it's shared and analyzed in different contexts with different organizations. So that's something we're still working through, in terms of how to really look at that from a policy standpoint, access control standpoint, the different legalities we have to deal with for privacy and whatnot. And then lastly, on the technical stack, a lot of push and pull in terms of how do you really make use of this data? How do you leverage it, make it accessible for decision support? And so we've done a lot on that, especially around crisis management, as you can imagine, in the recent past. And so really it starts first with having clean applications for data capture with connections to our master reference data tables that need to be consistent, with automated hard stops to enforce that data entry so that you have clean data sets to begin with. And then certainly having a good solid API management approach to be able to share that data into a data lake, and then having the right tools available for the actual analytics and then the data visualization for decision support has been really critical. And we're continuing to see that evolve across our space.
Great, thanks. Dave?
I would say, if I can channel what was just said, is we're probably in a similar, but we're just starting our journey to enterprise level data management across these different hybrid and multi-cloud environments. For the VA, we're the second largest federal agency, second to DOD, and we've got a massive mission of 3 different missions: healthcare, benefits, and memorials, plus all the corporate infrastructure and IT to support that. So we've got data and databases from anywhere from mainframes to modern RDS and anything in between. And in locations as small as offsite clinics to massive, national data centers, and then our cloud environment. So, we've got some good discipline within each of those silos and in our mission sets. And now we're getting to evolve that and mature to where we have a chief data officer and also policy experts within each of our administrations with each mission set to kind of work on those enterprise level policies and putting tooling in place to try to enforce that, as well as standing up APIs. So we're really attacking this on all fronts, but still at the beginning of that journey, I think, to really get it to the level we're intending to.
Awesome. So Walt, how are you seeing it from the client, the different, the various clients that you guys are seeing? How are you seeing it playing?
Yeah, from an industry perspective, I mean, I certainly would echo everything that's been said in terms of best practices. Maybe the only thing that I might add is that really strong replication and backup strategy, right? So obviously when it comes to having a hybrid cloud environment, it's incredibly important that should, God forbid, anything happen from a security perspective or a cyber perspective, that you're prepared for that. In addition to, what can go wrong in just in any IT environment, in kind of the world we live in, especially with people that are going to be, in all different areas, in all different, with all different kinds of connections, frankly, that are going to be interacting with your applications, your cloud, administrations to end user, or administrators to end users. So, from that perspective, it's just very important to have a strategy for when things go wrong. And that's generally something that can be handled with, good on-prem tools.
Excellent. Yes, thank you. Agreed. And actually, it's a good segue into one of the first questions that we've got. I think, this also, this question ties a little bit even to cultural challenges that organizations go through moving to this, right? So what are the merits of having a hybrid cloud platform as opposed to a standalone on-prem or, single cloud-based platform? And we'll go, Dave, you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. I think that some of the benefits are flexibility, right? There are different use cases for each of those technologies, and having the hybrid or multi-cloud approach gives us options to solve problems the most effective way for that particular problem set, in terms of resiliency, redundancy, or specific tools that are available in a given environment or particular mission requirement. So it's really flexibility and agility that having those options gives us.
And do you feel that for both?
Yes.
Either a hybrid or a...
Yeah, I think we use them both. I mean, we solve problems, the tools available. We're not limiting ourselves to one particular approach. So.
Okay, great. Brian? Oh, you.
There you go. Yeah, I definitely echo what David was saying. And also from our standpoint, I think with the cloud, you get the scalability, the speed of delivery, and the access to modern tools that you really just can't replicate at speed, at scale, in terms of meeting mission requirements and time. Time factors are a big push for us, at least. On the on-prem side, obviously, we've already made a significant investment in that. And from a licensure exposure standpoint, it's nice to have your data in non-proprietary formats, so you're not necessarily kept hostage by many APaaS and SaaS providers. What we end up seeing, sort of the best of all worlds from a hybrid standpoint, is leveraging the data on-prem and holding that core data set, and then using APaaS and SaaS solutions for the data capture and the workflow piece of it. And then, basically doing the analytics in an IaaS or PaaS type of environment where you can really leverage the speed and scalability and elasticity of cloud to meet those different needs.
Great. And Walt?
Yeah, I think it can be a question of whether or not you have certain tools that are going to be provided by certain cloud vendors, right? So if you want a multi-cloud environment, that's going to be for an application maybe that is very specific to one of those CSPs, versus within the advantage of the hybrid cloud side is really the data mobility. And just as has been said, ensuring that your data doesn't become extremely expensive to take in and out of certain clouds, right? I mean, it can be very advantageous to have that flexibility to work amongst different CSPs, as well as, again, some of the on-premise aspects of it. There are tools out there that can help with that, data mobility that I think are, more and more effective and more pervasive throughout the market. That's really what we're seeing within our customer sets.
No, thank you. And that, it is interesting, right? And I think that's something that we try and cover a lot in our conversations, both in our working groups and on the Cloud and Coffee, is that ability to not get stuck. And it's kind of a good segue into my next question, which is, what types of solutions have you guys made available to help strengthen the federal data management side within a hybrid and multi-cloud environment? Brian, I'll hit you first.
Yeah, you know, for us, we also have the impact of austere environments and geography. So locations that have poor internet penetration also sort of plays into the strategy as well. So as we look at that, we've really provided and helped facilitate solutions that allow things like data processing in an austere environment outside of internet connectivity, but on a mirrored SaaS platform, if you will. Then that data comes back to a SaaS environment for actual real-time processing, and then it moves back into another IaaS environment for analytics, and then those results go into, believe it or not, an on-prem environment for data sharing with other agencies. So there are a lot of solutions like that that can really harness the best of all worlds to meet those really unique needs. But obviously, for those that are not so complex in terms of their mission drivers, simplicity is always best. But when you can't hit the simplicity piece, then at least needing to get the correct solution sets really becomes a game changer.
Excellent. Walt, from an industry perspective, do you have a couple of cool stories you can share?
Well, we certainly do, but just to keep it a little bit more pervasive, right? I would say that the three tools that we're the most focused on are with respect to creating a common data plane. So making it really easy again for data mobility to transpire and for applications to be written that aren't going to be specific to one CSP or one situation. The effortless disaster recovery is something that we're very focused on. Obviously, that's something that can certainly help with some of the biggest challenges that arise from leaning on the cloud. And then efficient development and deployment tools. So I would echo what Brian said with respect to simplicity. I think the more our customers are able to keep things simple, I think the more effective we've seen, not only with respect to building those applications, but actually porting those applications, which is certainly a very difficult thing when you think about these the government environments, how expansive they are, and the time in which some of these applications were built. So those three areas are really where we're the most focused when it comes to building those tools. And I think that's that's kind of common throughout the market and throughout the industry. And I think we've all collectively made some significant strides, I would tell you, within the last 18 to 24 months in those areas.
Thank you. Dave?
So as I said earlier, we're at the beginning of our journey for really coming up with the more enterprise common data plane, or where we can share data across applications more cohesively. Most of our solutions are more mission driven. Our EHR systems for electronic health records are kind of driven in one silo. We've got a modernization effort going on there with our Cerner implementation from our Vista legacy application. We've also got a whole different set of applications to support our benefits portfolio and our memorials portfolio, our financial management. So a lot of this data resides in those specific mission sets and has specific compliance and reportability and shareability, retention requirements. So we're juggling that with how do we now leverage the cloud technologies that we brought to bear with our on-prem capability to kind of come up with these common tools. And so far we've been leveraging more mission specific within those mission specific silos, but now we're starting to look at like data loss prevention across the enterprise and some other things to manage our data more holistically. But again, we're at the beginning of that journey and still looking at how we're going to solve for that across multiple business sets.
Thank you. And that's a great segue, Alyssa, if you could throw up the first poll question. Really, I mean, the cloud presents modernization opportunities, right? And so for the audience here, in your opinion, how important are emerging technologies to securely managing data while undergoing the modernization of an agency's cloud? I mean, I think, years ago, I got into the industry on a large modernization effort, and it was amazing to talk to the stovepipes looking at data and how to leverage the data, and ultimately what do you do with that, and how do you get out of your own way? And I think a lot of things right now are creating modernization efforts where we should really look at this, right? And I think the past 18 months, I know, Brian, you and I've talked about it over the the past 2 to 3 years, it all of a sudden just really took hold, and some of that I think ties to some of the federal mandates as well. So when we look at the security side, I mean that obviously has to be for the the types of environments. Obviously 83% very important, But obviously when we look at this security, it's in everything we do. I mean, my family jokes about it when I send them public service announcement texts about spamming and different things, but it is something that we need to think about because there are more and more avenues as more and more is connected. And but how are you looking at security as you look at modernization as well? Brian, do you want to? You're off mute already, so I'll hit you first.
Yeah, I think I'll just stay off mute. um, so yeah, definitely, I echo everything you're saying, Chris. I mean, security and policy has to evolve along with the mission and the adoption of emerging technology at the speed of mission. And that's been a real challenge that we're finally starting to get that inertia moving in the right direction. So certainly as we move into zero trust architectures, and I know that's a highly used term these days, but frankly, where we see the main focal point for that is really focusing on protecting the data. Of course, yes, you have endpoints, you have networks and whatnot, but the real core issue is how do I protect the data? It could be through multiple factors. It could be through, maybe not creating the data until you absolutely need it. For us, that's often when we have event-driven things, that's a good method. And of course, the proper encryption, the good understanding of who's resolving to your DNSs out there, so you know what to protect. Having a single identity so that you can effectively mitigate insider threats rapidly, and also, have a good sense of what your organization's interacting with from a data perspective. And then making sure that you understand the different dynamics and the architectures within, your application infrastructure and data layers are really critical. So in terms of like DLP and whatnot, I think there's a lot of evolution that started, but a lot more that needs to go forward in terms of how do you really get at those agnostic views to be able to really make DLP real across multiple platforms. Obviously, there's a lot of disparate devil in the details in terms of trying to combine native control planes with, different CASB type solutions, and certainly identity providers to try to work through that. So, we've started moving in that direction. We have a long way to go, but I think that's going to be the future, really looking at how do we protect it from a holistic standpoint, but really focusing on where that data is living and providing that defense in depth to the data itself.
Dave, as a start, I mean, you got to be, these have to be in kind of the JIRA board, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave, you there?
Sure. From our perspective, we're really reinforcing some of the things we've already been doing with the executive order that came out almost a year ago now on cybersecurity, helping force us towards zero trust, help us implement that quicker, and attacking the problem from securing the data. I would agree that's the core goal here, is to secure the data. The applications and things are important, but if you don't secure the data, that's your biggest risk, right? So attacking it from a multi-factor approach, the encryption, defense in depth with different layers, implementing TIC 3.0. So those are the things we're really moving toward across all of our mission sets and platforms. So it really is important to defend that data.
Yeah. Walt, I'm going to hit you with that question from a security standpoint, but also a question that we have from the audience around frameworks for evaluating hybrid cloud application performance quality, right? So we're talking about security. As you think about kind of the performance side, what should the organizations be thinking about to balance all of these pieces that we're talking about today?
Yeah, I would say that from a security perspective, just back to the poll question, the key word for me there was emerging, right? Because I think it's, having been in a security company before, it is the type of thing where you're always trying to stay one step ahead. And it is very important to continue evolving on what your security strategy is and looking at what tools that are out there and available. So it is incredibly important to be, having that eye on what is emerging from that perspective. From a application performance perspective, it's always a push and pull, right? I mean, we've seen it for a long time in terms of the way that the security teams have interacted with not only the application developers and the end users alike, right? When it comes to that performance, everybody really doesn't want to feel the impact of those security tools. In terms of how to measure that performance, I mean, the key, I think, in a lot of a lot of areas, a lot of environments is going to be latency. I mean, it's just, it's how quickly can people interact with those applications. And when you think about the world that we're in from a hybrid workforce perspective, think about the amazing things that the government has accomplished through TIC 3.0 and other really constraints that keep us all safe. To be able to bring this hybrid workforce to bear within the course of the last 2 years has been absolutely unbelievable. So to keep people secure and to keep those applications performing in the face of all that is just something we should all be, in my opinion, just very thankful of the efforts of the folks that I'm on the panel here with, as well as the many countless others that have had an impact on us being able to continue to run as a country.
Thanks, Walt. And Brian and Dave, I want to hit you with a little bit different view, and I think I've pinged Brian on this one when we were on the Cloud and Coffee. But so Dave, in the world of kind of the modernization, and since you're at the start of it, I'll let you go first. How do we look at an organization's evolutional change, right? So we've talked about, and I'm sure you've been in conversations of kind of that server hugging mentality, right? And I do think that the multi-cloud, hybrid cloud world gives you a little bit of that flexibility. But how do you take kind of the culture side, to help along with kind of the performance and security and all the other pieces? How do you guys look at that as you start looking at data sharing and application modernization? How are you guys looking at those pieces?
You're not news to anybody. Organizational change is difficult, and it's no stranger to cloud migration or cloud adoption. That organizational change is one of the challenges you have to overcome. We started our journey back in 2018, and we did have quite a bit of organizational, let's just say, resistance to overcome, but we've done that, and largely our organization has embraced all the new technologies, including things on-prem that are modernizing, right? So we're definitely focused on modernization, and really we're fortunate enough to have a really unifying mission, which is delivering service to our veterans and our staff on the front line. So really that kind of unifies all of us together to do that. But you still have the challenges of how do you get people the right training? How do you organize so that you can work together as a team? And part of the changes we just made to bring our organization closer together, whether our on-prem and our cloud and our platforms under one team, is the start of that. We've adopted some self-service training tools that are available to everybody and trying to promote certification and things like that. So all the things you heard about in the earlier presentation are there, and we have to try to just double down on that, because bringing everybody along and getting everybody engaged is really what's important.
Excellent. Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, no, I'd echo everything Dave said. I tell you, it's really not a technology problem. It's a people issue. And it's really a change management effort. There's pretty much nothing that operates the same way in the cloud as on-prem. Everything from how you buy it, how you pay for it, how you implement it, how you use it, it's all different. The policies around it have to change too. And I think a lot of organizations struggle. We've struggled. But the thing that, much like the VA's example has really compelled us has been the mission drivers. It was the mission space that really adopted cloud first, because the benefits outweighed the challenges. And so that was really the impetus to move the whole organization. And now at the enterprise level, we've caught up to that. And now we're figuring out how we provide, scalable shared infrastructure services so that we can abstract away some of the infrastructure pain, if you will, from the business areas, so they can really just get to work faster and leverage the benefits of cloud while still maintaining control over their environments and their delivery to their customers. So for us, making sure that we still allowed that decentralization versus centralization argument not to outweigh the mission drivers and benefits, and basically found a way to appease both, make basically a win-win situation for the best of both worlds. And that's really helped a lot. Still a lot of challenges out there in talent. There's just not enough talent. Everyone's competing for it. That's really, I think, the biggest limiting factor. The organizations that have compelling missions that are able to attract and retain talent with the right structures, incentives, and work are the ones that are going to be able to move more rapidly than others.
Okay, great, thanks. Walt, I'm going to tie you into the next poll question. Melissa, if you could throw out the next poll question. Because I think, as we're coming up on time here, really what is the biggest barrier to securely managing data while modernizing and improving an agency's cloud? I mean, I think from an industry standpoint, we see a lot of different pieces, and I think each agency has their their own their own unique aspects of what they're trying to do. But I would love to get kind of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I was literally thinking about what the answer to the poll question that I would give. Frankly, it is not an easy question.
All of the above, depending.
Exactly. And I had to change the background because I was jealous of some of these cool backgrounds I'm seeing. So yeah, I think I would agree that every single answer on there is applicable, but I would also just submit that it comes back to the last question, if I'm allowed to do that, right? I'd almost go with, I guess the answer is other for me, because the reality is that training people in this new environment is, to me, is by far the biggest risk and the biggest challenge when it comes to securing these spaces, because it's just, we used to only have to protect, I mean, I guess a long time ago at this point, but we used to only have to protect one perimeter, and now we are protecting so many. And so, the tools and other things that are out there certainly are a big part of managing, the security aspect of the cloud. But it's gonna, for me, come down to being able to train people on how to interact with the IT environment effectively.
Excellent. Dave?
I would say I would struggle which one of those to pick, because they kind of all do apply, right? I mean, depending on the situation. So really, it's difficult to choose. But I just want to go back to the previous answer and say one of the things that's helped us be successful, and I think will continue, is that we had the benefit from the beginning of our journey back in 2018 of having strong, consistent senior leadership support and championship across our formation, so that regardless of some changes of administration or leadership position changing, we've had that consistent guidance and support and vision from our leaders that's helped us on the implementation at the edge to try to really drive this stuff forward. And that's been key. And if you're trying to start the journey, that's what I'd look for, and make sure you have that strong vision and leadership from the top championing the effort, because it really helps you succeed.
Yeah, excellent. Agreed. Brian?
Yeah, and I'd echo all that. And yeah, it is impossible to choose. It's all of it. Yes.
Yeah, that should have had all the above.
Yes. But yeah, definitely, I'd say just in addition to all that, having really strong relationships and partnerships between the infrastructure and the development side and the security side is critical. Obviously, having that common understanding of what the business drivers are versus what the vulnerabilities and threats are, so that us as decision makers can balance that risk and make the right choices, because the cloud is only as good as you can secure it, and that's only as good as your teams that understand what they're doing and what the risks are. So, and the information they're sharing with other professionals in the space, it's absolutely critical.
Excellent. Alyssa, do we have time for one more question? We did get one more question in the chat here.
Yeah, do it lightning round.
All right, lightning round, as in I'm going to hit you guys with there's a question in there about the acquisition process. It was specific for Dave, but I think it's a broad piece, so I'll throw that out there, but I will let each of you kind of give, if you want a closing statement about what you guys are doing, feel free. I'll hit Brian first, since you're on my screen.
Yeah, so acquisitions, it's expensive, it's challenging. I think the government has a long way to go to really realize the Fortune 1 company equivalency that we have in buying power. For us, what's been really beneficial is doing enterprise license agreements at the department level. I'd like to see that at the government level, and I think we'd all get a lot more benefit from that. But it's something that definitely you need to think about how you're going to acquire that, in terms of also how you're going to then manage it, how you're going to cost it, how you're going to recoup budget for it, et cetera. It's critical to have that acquisition strategy tied to your operational strategy.
Excellent. Thank you. Dave?
double down on what Brian just said and say, really, it's important to have a creative contracting officers working through the FAR processes, which were, basically created a long time before cloud it was even a thing.
Right.
So you really have to be understand how to interpret those to drive your mission forward, and it's critical to your success. If you don't have good acquisition strategy, you're not going to succeed at this. So that's where I'd leave it.
Excellent. Walt.
I think coming at it from the other side, but I would definitely echo everything that's been said, and the flexibility and creativity that I have seen in terms of what the government has been able to put out there through the RFIs and RFPs and right into contracts. I think it has changed significantly within the last, again, 2 to 3 years. The creativity that we see out there to get the government exactly what they want, what they need, and do it in a way that is defined by outcomes is one of the most significant changes that I've witnessed.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And Alyssa, thank you for the extra time for the lightning round. Brian, Dave, Walt, thank you very much for your time with the ATAR group, and really enjoyed the conversation and agreed. I think creativity right now is definitely critical. All the attendees, thank you very much for spending the additional time with us, and have a great day. Alyssa.
Thank you guys so much. That was such an enjoyable panel. That's why I gave you guys the extra time. So good. So that was so great. Thank you again to all of our sponsors over at Red Hat, Acquia, Micro Focus Government Solutions, Ping Identity, Nutanix, Pluralsight, and Pure Storage for partnering with us today. And thank you again to our amazing panelists, moderators, and our keynote. Also, thank you to our amazing audience. And thank you for your participation, and we hope to see you at our next event. Before you go, we would like you to fill out this last poll if you would like your CPEs delivered right to your inbox. If you filled out all 6 poll questions today, you are eligible for your CPE credits. We'll send it right to your email, so you don't have to do anything. We'll do all the work for you. But other than that, hope you have a great rest of your day.